Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 240 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, your humble host for the next couple hours of intense video game discussion. And riding sidecar with me today to do that is Matt Kyle. What's up, Matt?
Just 2077.
Yeah, man. Big episode today. You guys have been waiting a long time for this episode. So have we. We're going to discuss Cyberpunk 2077 today in depth. In fact, I think we have like 5 or 6 topics, but the bulk of our time today is going to be spent with Cyberpunk. We know that's what you want, and it's what we want to talk about because we've been playing it since Tuesday. We got it, Matt? Is that
Monday
right?
night.
Tuesday night, yeah.
Monday night.
Yeah. So we've had it since like Monday night. But neither of us have finished it yet, which maybe that will lend to our discussion a little bit. But anyway, that's coming up later on in the show. I wanted to give you guys an update on our new merch and our T-shirts. I've mentioned before that getting these T-shirts done has been an unmitigated disaster. It has continued to be an unmitigated disaster. So we put the shirts up for sale on Black Friday. I went and picked up the shirts that morning from the company. Once I got them, I was like, okay, we're good to put them up for sale. You guys bought the shirts, and then I started going to process some of the orders, and the shirts were all jacked up. They had used like secondhand shirts for some of our shirts. Some of the screens were like faded on the edge. They did a horrible job. This, by the way, was the third shirt company I've gone to in Los Angeles. The third. And the process for doing this is it takes forever. You have to set everything up. You have to get them the art. You have to go through the quotes. So anyway, I went back to the company. They were like, well, by our count, like 25% of them are screwed up. My count was like at least like 60 or 70%. We got a huge argument. I ended up basically canceling the charge on my credit card because they refused to refund my money. And I told them, I'm like, look, man, we can work something out here now, or I can take all the money back. And he basically said, F you. So I called my credit card company, and they canceled the charge. So I had to start all over with another shirt company. Now, keep in mind, this happened a while ago. So we finally got through all of that process, and the new shirts are coming very soon. Now, I'm not going to promise that they're going to be great. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. Because after what just happened last time, I really don't freaking know. So as it sits right now, the shirts are supposed to be finished on Monday, and then we'll start shipping them out immediately. I totally understand this sucks. I totally understand that if normally when you buy something online, it ships the next day and you have it 2 days later. I totally get it. If any of you guys want your money refunded for the shirts, just let me know. Send an email at orders at sifted.net. And let us know you want a refund. Let us know your username and what your order was to make sure that we refund the right orders. I am willing to do this. No questions asked. If you're a little bit more patient, just a couple more days, they're going to be shipping out. So I just want to let you guys know what's going on. You're probably wondering, like, where the crap is my shirt? That's what's been going on. This has been a nightmare that has been going on for me for like 2 months. You mix it all in with the COVID and all these businesses. Here's something, Matt, that drives me crazy. I'm a small business. COVID sucks for any business. It sucks for small businesses especially because you're running on a shoestring budget already. So you think small businesses in this environment would just bend over backwards for business. And that is not what I have encountered at all. All these shirt companies are little small guys. They're not like our size. They're bigger than us. They have like dozens of employees, but they're not big businesses. And they suck. Their customer service is terrible. The output that they've given us has been terrible. The problem is the old company that did our shirts went away. The company dissolved. And then a couple people who worked there started some new shop, and they're trying to sell it as the same shop. Well, as it turns out, that's the shop that just screwed me over. So anyway, I've been very frustrated to see these small businesses like basically saying, hey, everyone's giving us a pass right now. I'm not. I'm working harder now than I ever have. So anyway, that's what's going on. Again, if you want your shirts refunded, just send an email to orders at sifted.net and we'll process it immediately. But seriously, if you wait a couple days, the shirts are going to ship. You'll get them plenty of time for Christmas, etc. I just want to be honest and let you guys know what's going on and give you guys some options if you need or want them. A couple other things before we get going. Our Game of the Year episode, as you can see, this episode being pre-recorded, like the last episode, which sucks and we hate it. but we just don't have a TriCaster TD. But our Game of the Year episode will be streamed live on Twitch. And in fact, it's happening next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific. So we'll be giving our Game of the Year awards out, but also we'll be recapping our first topic for episode 240, and that is the Game Awards. It is early on Thursday for Matt and I right now. The show is literally happening in like 3 or 4 hours. We're trying to get this recording done so we can go and check out the awards, and obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done for the awards as far as curation and stuff as well. So anyway, we're not going to sit here and go through the whole awards. They're happening in a couple hours, but I did want to have a little bit of fun with the awards and try to guess what some of the winners will be. And why that's fun for us is because the way they pick awards at the Game Awards is they have an editorial committee that I used to be a part of for the VGAs for years and years. And it's like 30, 40, 50 editors from all around the industry, and they basically just send in a ballot. And then they count them all up, and that's how they get their winners. So it's always interesting, at least I think, for Matt and I to try to figure out what all the other editors are going to pick, because we know a lot of them personally. We've worked with a lot of them for literally decades in some cases, and we feel like we can kind of get a read on them, so it's kind of fun. So we're going to go through a couple categories here, actually just 2, and then there was a fun announcement made this morning, and we're going to try to guess what that could be. First up, we're going to talk about Best Direction. Now, Matt, before we get into this, I would say looking through the categories on the Game Awards website, there wasn't a whole lot that I was like, gee, I don't know which game is going to win. Have you looked through that stuff, and would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a good thing we're not going through all the categories, because my prediction is basically the same thing for all of them except one.
Okay.
I think Last of Us 2 is going to sweep this, with the exception of Game of the Year.
Okay. All right. We'll get to that.
But I think that's going to be controversial, because already what's the viewer pick, the audience pick, whatever that is?
It was Ghost of Tsushima one.
Yeah, but the reason that was because basically 4chan set up a brigade to make sure Last of Us 2 didn't win because they hate it.
Oh, right.
Not that Ghost
That's
of Tsushima,
awful, man.
Not that Ghost of Tsushima doesn't deserve it. Ghost of
Tsushima
is
it's a great
fantastic.
Game. Yeah.
If someone says they like Ghost of Tsushima better than Last of Us 2, I totally get it.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with them.
I might even say that. I haven't decided yet. But I think Last of Us, because of that, you're getting like a weird tilted thing. My guess in terms of critics and how we've seen critics react this year is Last of Us 2 is going to get almost everything. Also, art direction I think should go to Ghost of Tsushima. But
yeah,
sure. I think Last of Us 2 is the clear favorite in terms of if you're polling actual.
If you're
critics.
saying like which game is going to win the most awards,
right?
I would agree with that. I think,
and
knowing the people who vote for this stuff,
right?
I think
best
that
direction,
helps.
Even if you hated The Last of Us 2. How can you argue that this game wasn't incredibly well directed? The undertaking
you segued into the first topic, which is Best Direction. The nominees are Final Fantasy VII Remake, Animal Crossing New Horizons.
Best Direction? Come on.
Or I'm sorry, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, and The Last of Us Part 2. And you already shared what you think is going to win, The Last of Us Part 2. I also agree with that. I think that it will win because I think that's kind of the wheelhouse for The Last of Us Part 2. I think it's for a lot of people, I think that will be the strongest part of the game. And as you said, it's probably going to win a lot of other awards throughout the course of the show. But this one, to me, is the one that it deserves to win the most out of all of them. And Neil Druckmann, the director, was just promoted to co-god at Naughty Dog or whatever. Yeah. It's all lining up for The Last of Us Part 2 to win Best Direction. The other category we're going to try to guess is Game of the Year, obviously. Now, don't read too much into this. We're going to give out our Game of the Year on Tuesday. Matt and I both have our own games of the year. Don't think that our discussion here is going to tip our hand as to what our picks are. Keep in mind, we're getting inside the mind of our colleagues and trying to figure out what the hive mind of game journalists will think.
Well, nobody's going to think this is my pick for Game of the Year. My prediction on this, I promise.
And the nominees are Doom Eternal, which is kind of surprising, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, and The Last of Us Part 2. Almost a duplicate of what we just saw for Best Direction.
Which, to be fair, is like that happens in the Oscars too. If it's the best directed movie of the year, it's probably one of the best movies of the year, right? Yeah. Same thing with games.
Totally makes sense. And so, Matt, you said that you're going to throw us a curveball here. What is your pick for Game of the Year for the Game Awards for 2020?
Yeah. So I'm saying like Last of Us 2 is going to sweep most of the other stuff, but I think the Game of the Year is going to be Animal Crossing.
So we just published...
Because there's no other game that exemplifies 2020 better than being locked in your house during pandemic, playing Animal Crossing every day to give yourself some semblance of structure. It would not be my pick, but I feel like given how I've read all these people's
soliloquies
and how they're still talking, it's like I feel like if you're gonna go back and look back on 2020 as a critic who's like kind of taking all of media into account and what you've played and what you've had to do. I feel like you're going to look back and think Animal Crossing exemplifies this year more than The Last of Us Part 2. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. Like Animal Crossing, the bloom went off the Animal Crossing rose pretty fast for me in comparison. But I think that is going to be the pick here.
Way faster for me. So we published yesterday, and it's live right now at sifted.net. We have a series of prediction articles that we do for big events called Entirely Too Many.
Right.
And we published Entirely Too Many, the Game Awards 2020 predictions yesterday. And your predictions line up with Vincent's almost identically. In fact, his closing paragraph was, Last of Us 2 going to mop up, but because of coronavirus, I think Animal Crossing will win. I'm going to disagree.
I'm basically saying Animal Crossing Game of the Year, Last of Us 2, everything else it was nominated for except art direction.
Yeah.
Like that's basically my call.
Okay. And I'm going to disagree with both of you. I think it would be a travesty if Animal Crossing won Game of the Year. I just do.
Also remembering just the general Nintendo bent of.
I understand completely why both you and Vincent
I'm not trying to say they're right. I'm just saying I think that's what they're going to do.
I completely understand why both you and Vincent believe that. I just don't. I think objectively, when the editors went to look at this stuff, I think they wanted to pick Animal Crossing, and probably a lot of them did. But I think when they look at it objectively, they're going to be like, you know what, Animal Crossing, that was pretty much the same game I've played 4 or 5 times, with a little extra like networking stuff thrown in. And I think that they will take everything into account, not just the cultural angle of each game. And I think The Last of Us Part 2 will win Game of the Year.
I would even look. I think it's stupid that Final Fantasy VII is nominated for Game of the Year.
That has a good chance too.
But even I would say that Final Fantasy VII had more ambition behind it than Animal Crossing. I just think Animal Crossing is going to stick out in the critics' minds, in the judges' minds, in a way that none of the other games are. And a lot of them are. I'd say even the majority of them are probably still playing it. I just think it's inescapable. Like I agree with what you say there. I just think you're giving them way too much credit.
I love those guys and girls. I want to give them as much credit as I can.
Also, your focus on what is objective is not what I think the majority of them look at. Okay. Like objective means nothing in terms of determining the quality of something subjectively. So I think they're going to say I think when it comes to the Game of the Year, and we've had these arguments and we've had these meetings in the past where it's like, some people come at it like you do, where it's like what is the technical, the best achievement in the art form, and some people come at it as like what made me happiest.
What did I like? Yeah,
and I think Game of the Year has that dichotomy going on more than the other categories to some degree, because the Game of the Year award in almost every situation tends to be more like, oh, what's the thing we liked best, as opposed to like what was the best achievement. You know what I mean?
In a lot of cases, those games are technically very sound. That may not be the case for next year at the Game Awards when Cyberpunk rolls around.
That's going to look like, but who knows?
But usually they are
look like by then.
Yeah.
But
and then it does kind of get to a case of like splitting hairs, where you're like, well, okay, sure, probably the controls feel better in this game, but I don't care about that much. I care more about the writing, or I care more about the visuals, or whatever, So it does get to that point, and at a certain point, as the leader of an editorial team, you kind of have to put your foot down and be like, okay,
right, but
this is where I'm drawing the line, and this is what we need to decide on.
Like, is there a leader on this panel, or is it just ballots?
It's Jeff. Right? Jeff has a person that handles like the legwork of it. So when you're actually involved in the process, you aren't talking to Jeff. You're talking to kind of the guy who's running that part of the show. But he will then like interject if there's questions and jump into like the email thread and be like, hey, this is what I was thinking when I did this, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of how the process plays out. But you don't have like constant contact with the other people or with Jeff. Like you're kind of on an island. Which would probably lend more to what you're saying.
Yeah, what game has an island?
Touche, Kyle. That's pretty good. So anyway, there's our picks. Matt thinks Animal Crossing. I think The Last of Us Part 2. And I wouldn't even be surprised.
By the time you're listening to this, you'll know already.
You will know. But you're right. But I think that's the fun of watching this, is watching me say The Last of Us Part 2 and knowing I was wrong and laughing at my ass while I'm saying it. So...
We're all wrong. It was Doom Eternal.
What I was going to say is that, like, I would not be surprised at all if Final Fantasy VII Remake wins it. It's the, like...
I would be shocked if that wins it, because there's just not enough
I mean,
people
I would be appalled that it won, but I wouldn't be shocked.
There's not enough people in the critic world that fell in love with that game and stayed in love with it, I think. Most of the people that I know, at least, that would be on this board would be like... they see that game for what it is. And you may not say it publicly the way I do, because you don't want to get people yelling at you about it. But, like, I don't care. That game's garbage. It's a nice idea. I wanted it to be good. It was not. It doesn't deserve to be in the company of all those other games that it's nominated with.
And you know why it is, though.
Of course it is, because it's popular. I mean, we're not.
I would argue Doom Eternal's on the fringe, too. Like, I was kind of surprised it was a nominee.
I didn't like Doom Eternal very much, but because I didn't like what it was doing. I wanted more of a follow-up to the 2016 game, and this is more of an arcade reinvention of how Doom plays, and it does that really, really well. I just don't care for it. Like, I don't. That's not what I want.
I thought it was really good and really sound.
My dislike of Doom Eternal 2 is entirely on me. Like, there's nothing wrong with the game at all. It's just not what I want personally.
Yeah.
I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is bad, like broken.
You wanted it to be good.
I think it's a bad game. Like, I don't think Doom Eternal is a bad game. I just don't like it very much.
Definitely not. I would not be surprised if Remake wins it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up winning other categories as well.
It might. I mean, it might win. I mean, it's dumb, but it might win, like, I don't know, soundtrack
or narrative or something insane.
There's no possible way it wins narrative against Last of Us 2. Like, it's just not going to happen. Don't overestimate the Square fanboys are loud, but don't overestimate their numbers.
Yeah, well, it's not even them that's voting. It's the press. So
right,
but Final Fantasy VII, man, it's been that, like, sacred cow for like 20-some years.
Yeah, until the cow showed up, and you're like, this cow has no bones. It didn't work out too well. And also, like, we're not under any illusion that this is anything other than a popularity contest that, like, is meant to drive trailers and marketing into our eyeballs, right? Like, this is not. This is not a prestige event in terms of the awards being given out. It's a big deal to see what gets announced.
And I'll be interested to see how good that stuff is this year, too. I'm not convinced it's going to be one of the better years.
I mean, we already had Phil Spencer saying, like, everybody just calm down.
Yeah, because here's, like, something Xbox, everyone's like, oh, my God!
And everybody, I mean, I've seen a lot of people say, like, Elden Ring better be there. I'm like, buckle up, because I don't think it's going to be there.
But I'll say this, like, every year, Jeff surprises me with at least one thing that I did not think would be there, and it is. So,
and a lot of times the big surprises and the best stuff out of the Game Awards are things that we'd never heard of before.
Yeah, some of the stuff that airs like during the commercials.
Yeah, or just like new announcements, like not to lean on the world premiere, but like. A lot of the best stuff from the Game Awards has always been like, oh, I'd never heard of that. They announced that at the Game Awards, and it was great. Yeah. And now I got to look forward to another year of hearing nothing about it. But whatever. I mean, he got it. He put it out there first. He did. So we got Sekiro there the first time, so I understand why people are saying that about Elden Ring.
That's what I was thinking about when I said, like, he sometimes has things that really surprise me.
Right. But the problem with that is, like, Sekiro was like a vague, we didn't even get a title, like, just sort of what the hell is that thing?
It was also published by Activision, which makes a big difference.
And this would be like, the first anything we see of this game would be from I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's not. The chances aren't good. I don't want to get. I'm not saying. I shouldn't even say get someone's hype up because everyone has seen this already. But yeah, my guess is it's not shown. And then the final thing we're going to discuss for the Game Awards is that this morning a big announcement came out before the show. And that was that Nintendo will be announcing a new Smash Brothers character in today's Game Awards broadcast. We've talked about this before, so we're not going to beat the drum for too long again. But Matt, quickly, what's your prediction for the character?
I think it would be either that one character that all the hardcore Nintendo fans want, who I can never remember who it is. It begins with like an O or something.
Remember what franchise it's from?
No, I think it's like Earthbound or something. I don't know.
One the fans really want.
Yeah, it's It's a meme now. It's like it's from a Super Mario RPG. That's what it's from. It's like I can never remember. The last time I came up with this, I couldn't remember either. And someone in the comments said, "Oh, it's this person." I'm like, yeah, that's who it is. I think it's either that or Master Chief.
Okay. I'm gonna bet on, and this is partly wishful thinking.
Who's left?
Yeah. Well, this is partly wishful thinking and partly based on some rumors that have been flying around. And that is Ryu Hayabasa from Ninja Gaiden. And my hope is that they announce Ryu for Smash, and then, and this may anger Elden Ring fans, instead of Elden Ring being the big Japanese reveal, the big Japanese reveal is Team Ninja and the new Ninja Gaiden, and they come out afterwards. That's obviously pie in the sky, me dreaming stuff.
I'll modify that by saying that it could be Ryu, but it would probably be accompanying the announcement of the Ninja Gaiden Sigma Trilogy Collection, which leaked a couple of days ago.
That could be too. Yeah.
And for the love of God, that better be on more than just the Switch. I mean, I already have 1 and 2 on backwards compatible on Xbox, so I guess it doesn't matter really. But I would hope that would not be limited to the Switch, but Ryu would be a good addition. The other pie in the sky, like, oh, that would be neat to have in Smash Brothers, I think would be Spyro.
Yep. Or Crash. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens.
Crash would make a lot of sense, yeah.
Also owned by Activision. Mm-hmm. Not really a Sony exclusive character anymore.
No, well, same with Spyro. Spyro used to be identified with Sony, and
so
anymore.
Any of those guys I think could make it, but my dream of, and look, we are way overdue for a new Ninja Gaiden. We've had Neo 1, they just released Neo 2, it tanked. It's time for Ninja Gaiden. That's all there is to it. And so I think everything's aligning. The stars are aligning. Nintendo is aligning. Hopefully Team Ninja is aligning, and we'll get a new Ninja Gaiden announced at the Game Awards.
Whoops, it's Ninja Gaiden Yaiba 2. Oh.
It's possible. It is totally possible. I don't know what it is. Why Koei Tecmo is abandoning that franchise. I don't get it. I mean, the last one was not great. I do understand
I think it was largely because the people who made 1 and 2 are gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and Yosuke Hayashi, he worked on like Sigma, and he worked on Ninja Gaiden for a long time.
But the other thing is like Sigma.
But that's Itagaki's
Sigma 2
franchise.
was bad. Sigma 2 was a downgrade, really.
Yeah.
Partly because it was on the PS3 and it couldn't run everything, so they had to downgrade stuff, and they took out a lot of the dismemberment and stuff. Like, I always loved at the end of the Xbox 360 version, you could just kind of see how the fight had gone by the blood splatters and where the limbs had landed and stuff. And like that was pretty much gone in 3 because they couldn't display that much clutter on that system properly.
The Ninja Gaiden 2 was just gross.
Oh yeah,
it was so gory. But yeah, you're right. They all left. When Itagaki left, he took a bunch of people with him to go work at his Valhalla studio, which has basically floundered ever since. So,
well, they gave us Devil's Third. What are you talking about?
Here's my point. Team Ninja's had a break. They had their chance to be like, okay, that was Itagaki's franchise. Let's let it rest for a while and do our own thing. They did that. They made Neo. It was moderately successful. It's time for the return of the king. Let's make it happen. All right, let's move on. We're going to
get Itagaki in the meeting for that one a couple times a week. I don't know.
No, if that's the case, it will definitely not happen. Those guys, I don't think that they're too fond of each other after the separation. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's not like Itagaki hit it out of the park after he left either, but
he didn't.
I don't know. The quality of Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 might have been like a lightning in a bottle. It's like of the time thing. I don't know how much I trust in new Ninja Gaiden, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
If it's from Team Ninja, I will. If it's from Valhalla Studios, I would not.
But he would be a really good addition to Smash Brothers one way or the other.
Yep, he would work perfect. Yep. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about the PlayStation 5, but not the one that you're trying to get or you just got. This week, a patent was unveiled for I know it's hard to believe, for a new PlayStation. And the kicker here is that the patent is filed for a dual GPU console with a focus on cloud gaming. For those of you who don't know anything about PC gaming, if you build a PC, you can put 2 GPUs in your PC, and then they're basically bridged together via this tech called SLI. And I'm guessing if Sony were to do this, they'd probably find some different way to kind of work around that. It wouldn't just be like you building like a rig or whatever. But basically the power of 2 GPUs that will be used for a console, and it is curious that they specifically mention in the patent cloud gaming. And then The patent goes on to state that the new console would have more RAM compared to what PlayStation currently has on the market, which may murk things up a little bit. First of all, Matt, do you think that this is going to happen? And if so, when?
So I talked about this patent thing with one of my dev friends who's been in the business for 20 some years, and he says it's nonsense.
Meaning he's
like that wouldn't do anything. He's like that's a useless hardware configuration to me. He's like, oh wait, basically he's like, I don't know how you would make that be of any significant benefit to the point that you could charge more money, or that we wouldn't have to do a bunch of work on games we finished years ago to make it work properly with it. He was basically of the opinion that a layman will look at 2 GPUs and think that, oh, you've doubled the power, or you've made but like to him, he's just like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
by the way, that's not how it works, people. Like if you have dual GPUs, you don't like double the graphics output of your PC. That's not how it works. The next GPU provides an incremental increase in performance. As
someone who has $2,000 video cards in his computer, I promise you, not worth it. But he was basically saying like, he's like, I'm sure they filed this because they worked it up and they were like, oh, it's an idea worth putting a marker on, basically. But he basically said he doesn't think there's any chance that this is the PlayStation 5 Pro or anything like that. He thinks it's just Sony came up with a thing. He's like, I'm sure they're working on it, but like, he's like, I don't think this is it. So does
he think it's more likely like something for PlayStation 6?
No, he thinks it's just nothing. He thinks it's a dead end, but but companies will patent things they don't intend to move on just in case someone else thinks of something better with that idea.
That happens all the time. That happens all the time.
So that's probably what's happening here. This is about the time they will be thinking about the hardware for a pro version of the PS5. And even, I'm sure Cerny is sketching out pie in the sky ideas about what the PS6 would be as we speak. But like this feels like the other thing about it is like, and I, a couple people I know, and I agree with them, and I thought of it too when I saw this, was like, this is way too brute force for Cerny.
Yeah, that's not how they design their hardware.
Cerny comes up with elegant ideas. This is just like cram another engine in the car.
It's an Xbox. That's basically how Xbox designs this hardware.
Right. This is how Xbox builds their stuff. It's inefficient. It's inelegant, and it doesn't feel like a modern Sony.
I wouldn't be surprised though if PlayStation 6 and whatever the next Xbox ends up being called, God knows. I wouldn't be surprised if they are dual GPU machines though.
It might it might help to have the extra power to process if you're bringing stuff in from the cloud, because
I think you start there. So you start the generation there so that all developers are creating games with that architecture.
It could be like kind of a PlayStation 6 like foundation.
Yeah, like a mid-cycle. I agree with you.
It doesn't look like it doesn't look like an evolution of the PS5
at all. No.
You gotta wonder how tall that one will be.
Maybe they'll just make it wide. I don't know.
It'll just be the entertainment shelf.
And you just put your TV on top of the Xbox or the PlayStation. How long will it be until that's the case, Matt? That's pretty funny.
It's the opposite of the Pactor future.
Yeah, I think the cloud thing...
You won't buy a TV with your console in it. You'll put your TV on the console.
It really is the exact opposite of what he was talking about. What do you think is up with the cloud stuff, though? Why? It's mentioned several times specifically in the patent. Does that trick any triggers for you?
Sony hasn't really delved into that too much, which is, I know we've said, and a lot of other people have said that, like, they're expecting Sony to kind of move in that direction to some degree, or add that on to PlayStation Now going forward, just because everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
That's my thought on that, with no evidence to back it up, is like, part of that might just be Sony kind of striking out in that cloud direction because they haven't yet, and sort of saying like, well, if everybody else is doing it, we might as well invest, kind of explore the space, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do anything with it.
Right.
Because they don't seem to have considered it to be a very important thing yet. And frankly, I agree with them.
Do you think it may be Sony's like blades for cloud gaming?
Could be. But again, like, I don't see I mean, I guess that could work. Like if Cerny figured out a way to make kind of the cloud stuff run through one GPU and the game process through the other GPU, so you can kind of get the data. He could. I absolutely could. Yeah. I don't know how that would work, but I'm not Mark Cerny, and I'm not even an eighth of Mark Cerny, so I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting, but I don't think it has any particular direct ramifications on what we're going to be playing in the near future.
Nothing immediate, like. Definitely not in the next 2 years, which I think is probably where both of us would guess we would see kind of that mid-cycle upgrade.
Because that's the thing, and also because my friends who work in dev that I asked about it, they all were kind of like meh, and if it was something that they were going to have to deal with soon,
that would not have been the reaction.
Apathetic about it. They would have been like, oh. Fuck this.
Or at the very least, you'd see a look of consternation on their face or whatever.
Why? Yeah. Because, look, if there's one thing that devs have been around for a long time have in common, they all hate that looming Sony came up with weird hardware shit again thing. And you're like, oh my God, now what do we have to figure out? The cell processor is a deep psychic wound in some of these guys' minds. So
I don't blame you. Anytime you are forced to work really hard to get to a place that usually you get to really easily, it's some of the most frustrating moments.
That's what
they
would always tell me. Back in the old, the 7th gen was like. It's like, we build the game on PC, we put it on Xbox 360, and it just works.
Yeah, it just runs.
And then we spend half a year making the PS3 version operate properly. Yeah. You always wonder why the PS3 version was worse, because they had to spend most of their time making sure it functioned, let alone that it was polished. Yep. That was the problem with that. And there's always that fear that is going to come back in some form if one of these companies makes a weird hardware choice. And luckily, none of them have. So all 3 current systems are pretty normal architecturally.
Yeah. Yep. That also helps with the partners that you choose for your hardware. Working with NVIDIA, AMD, it definitely makes it a lot easier.
I think Sony has definitely learned that lesson. I think Nintendo learned that lesson. And it has paid off huge for Nintendo.
Think about the fact that a lot of these guys, I mean, Sony still does to an extent, would design their own processors and their own GPUs. Think about that. That's insane.
It used to be the way.
I know.
So there's I think it's Ars Technica has a series called War Stories on YouTube. They have a playlist of all of them, and it's just they go interview old time devs about making these classic games. They have one on Prince of Persia, Crash Bandicoot, Homeworld. It goes way back, and it's all fascinating. Look this up and watch it. War Stories, they're amazing, and they always talk about how we went to make this game, the Homeworld one I just watched, and they come back, they're like, we went to make this game, and we said we're gonna make a 3D real-time strategy game. The first time anyone had ever done a real-time strategy game in full 3D. And the reason it's in space, so we didn't have to render the ground. And they're like,
it's a big bitmap behind everything.
Back then, there were no game engines, there were no tools. You had to build all your own dev tools to make whatever specific game you had to make. And we forget it. And so there was that period of transition, especially from developers who were around in the 90s, where they were used to building everything themselves. That was a big deal back in the 90s and even into the 2000s. One of the big reveals of a new console was what's the processor? What have they developed? You would get reports and rumors of the Project Dolphin, or
they all had code names, Flipper, and all that.
Flipper,
crap.
Or what was the
Broadway?
All the Nintendos were Dolphin centered for some reason.
Yeah, that was GameCube.
GameCube
was all Dolphin related,
and you can still find the Dolphin thing if you open it up and look at the processor.
It still says it on the processor.
And Dreamcast was
Katana,
was that?
I think it was
Katana. That's right. And all that's it was. That was part of the cloak and dagger of the reporting on an upcoming console, was figuring out all this custom hardware these companies had made, and it took some of them a long time to let go of that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was a big deal when the Dreamcast came out. And it was using Windows CE as the basis of its OS. The fact that Sega didn't make their own OS from scratch was unusual at the time.
Now, Nintendo did work with ATI on the GPU for GameCube.
Yeah, but they were still making their own.
Well, they did. They designed it with ATI.
Yeah, with ATI.
I mean, they worked with ATI.
And Nintendo in particular took a long time to let go of the idea that they had to make their own hardware. It was always that kind of thing. So, we're going to make it, but there's going to be this weird thing that annoys you about it. Development for it was always, or we're going to make the discs real small for no apparent reason.
You can't pirate.
I mean, they're adorable, but
which did not work. Because the GameCube is very easily pirated.
Also, a lot of those decayed. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I did hear that.
A lot of them decayed, and some of them they don't even decay and they're unplayable. They just whatever they used for the label, like you can remember the labels on them weren't even labels; they were printed.
They were screen printed. Yeah,
and so they could only have one color, which sucked. And like some of that stuff has just flaked off. Go if you have a GameCube collection. Go open all the cases and see how many of your discs are still like pristine.
I didn't know that.
Some of them have had some like kind of disc rot problems with the screen printing and stuff. I had that with Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes.
That sucks. That's like the one GameCube game that you want. One of them.
It's a rare one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably worth some money.
Twin Snakes is worth a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it still works. But the whatever process did not. That's one of the things about collecting is you find out what things were not made to last, not intentionally.
And you don't know until 20 years later when you pull something out of your closet. Yeah.
That's the gold plastic syndrome. That's what that is. It's with Transformers and other stuff that was made in the. You remember in the 90s, everything was the wacky colors, and one of the things they loved is making stuff out of this swirly gold plastic, and something about the chemical composition of that, after about 10 to 13 years, it loses all its integrity and it becomes brittle. And brittle as in like you can crumble it like pastry in your hand.
Wow.
And like there's a couple Transformers like G2 Silverbolt and a couple Beast Wars characters. They're made entirely of that gold plastic.
Oh God.
And the best one is I can't remember his name, but he was from a line in G2 that like their gimmick was you press the button and they sprang into robot mode. And if he's all gold, he's like a 40s car, and he's all gold. And if you get one today, and he's still intact in the package somehow, and you press the button to transform him, he will explode.
Best Transformer ever.
He's basically made of like crackers.
Right now he is, yeah.
So that is a thing that constantly happens, and like you see, like stuff that's built to be sold in the mass market is not always intended to be a collector's item, and sometimes you don't know. You don't know. Nintendo did not print those discs intentionally thinking, by the time they decay, it'll be too late for them to return them to the store. It's just something that happens.
But I will tell you what did happen probably is that they got quotes from a bunch of disc manufacturers. They chose the cheapest one, and there was probably some process that they used that maybe one of the other guys wouldn't have used. There's no way to know, but
it could be. And like it's a funny thing to look back. It's the same with like you go if you have old Masters of the Universe figures, go find that box and open it up and note that they're all covered with a thin film of goo now because that plastic, because it was made, wasn't made to last. It bleeds this like. Basically,
chemical.
The oil. Basically, it's the petroleum product they use to make that plastic malleable. Is it separates out of it and leaks and bleeds. It bleeds out, and you touch it, and your hands get all like it's disgusting. You basically have to boil them to get rid of it.
Well, there you go. Catch up on retro toys with Matt Kyle. Maybe we need to give you a whole show to do that stuff because you definitely know your shit. Okay, let's move on. That's the PS5 Pro, which both Matt and I think probably not for a couple years, best case scenario, and whatever is in that patent is probably not the PS5 Pro in the first place.
Yeah, you're looking at like a prototype of a prototype at best there. Yep. But someone in Sony thought it was a good enough idea that we should probably put dibs on it.
Just to make sure someone else can't take it.
Yeah, which fair. Yeah, sure. That's corporate development in a nutshell right there.
Yep. Next up, we're going to talk about BioWare. What used to be one of our favorite developers in the entire industry has kind of fallen. I mean, it really was. Like, for me, it was one of my favorite developers in the industry. And now
I was waiting for Cyberpunk over the weekend. I played KOTOR 1 again.
Yeah. I mean, those games still hold up.
Holds up.
They still hold up. But over the last few years, and I think it all started with the release of Mass Effect Andromeda, I think people still had high hopes and thought BioWare was the same studio before that.
I mean, I think a lot of people would say it started with Inquisition.
Yeah, because a lot of people didn't like Inquisition. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, Inquisition has a lot of fans. A lot of Dragon Age fans love it or think it's the best one. I certainly think it's the one that plays the best of the three, but I don't like Dragon Age much to begin with. But like, I think a lot of people would point, especially because Mass Effect Andromeda is basically a reskin of Inquisition in terms of quest design and map theory. I feel like a lot of people would point to Inquisition as sort of where the first red flag went up.
Yep. And then it continued with Mass Effect.
Andromeda is definitely, the peak. Well, okay, I guess Anthem would be the peak, but Andromeda was the
I forgot about Anthem already. But you're right.
Don't you forget about Anthem? Isn't that weird? Because I was like, God, they haven't made a game in years. I'm like,
yeah, because I was thinking about BioWare. That game did not pop into my head. Like,
no,
it's pretty funny to think about that. Although I did enjoy, actually, Anthem more than most people
I did not hate Anthem. I just... It didn't stick in my head at all.
I had totally forgotten, basically, that they had made that game. So that's sort of the last 3 games from this legendary studio. None of them have been terrible, but they have not been these next-level experiences that, like it or not, we had grown to expect from BioWare. It drove innovation for years and years, and now it appears to just kind of be getting in line behind everyone else.
It was so much at the forefront of how you told an RPG story in a video game that it was the basis for Jonah Nolan's idea for Westworld.
Yeah.
That's how influential this company was. Like, Christopher Nolan's brother was like, played these games and was like, I bet this is the basis for an idea for an actual major HBO series.
Yeah.
It's like and he did it. And like, if you watch Westworld, you can see that.
Oh yeah.
You can see that storytelling idea, that kind of, I mean, I certainly watched it. I knew he had that influence, but like watching, I'm like, oh, that's from BioWare. That was from this BioWare game. Like,
even the art and the way like all the sci-fi stuff is designed to me is very Mass Effect. The colors, there's a lot of white that they use in the show. Mass Effect uses a lot of white. I can totally see the comparison.
Yeah, the influence is there, and I think he has talked about it in interviews. It's so it's amazing to kind of see that we've come from that to like, we forgot about your most recent release.
Well, look, here's the thing. Dragon Age 4, although we don't know if that's really what the title is going to be. Dragon Age 4 is actually going to be shown off here in the next couple hours at the Game Awards. Chances are we're going to see the first gameplay from Dragon Age 4. I am hoping...
Maybe. I'm like wondering if it's going to be another like game dev interview thing.
Like another like developer doc type thingy where they show a little footage.
We see like character models on the screen behind them. And that's
I don't think they can get away with that anymore.
I don't think they can either, but maybe they don't. Maybe
I'm
worried they don't have anything else ready.
It's possible.
You know what I mean?
I think we'll see the game being played. Well, not played, not like, hey, we're going to play the game and watch us play it, but there will be in-engine footage in the trailer.
In-engine cinematics.
Yeah, we'll see what the game looks like, essentially, today. Yeah. But unfortunately, this week, we got some really bad news coming out of BioWare, more bad news, and that is that 2 more of its high-profile developers are leaving the studio. Casey Hudson and Mark Dara, 2 guys who have been there for a long time. I think a lot of people viewed them as kind of the last bastion of the old BioWare that might still be at the
not
studio.
The first time Casey Hudson's left.
This is true.
Come back.
Because he just came back, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
A little while ago, yeah. I basically came back to like in the wake of Andromeda to help Dragon Age 4, as I understood it.
Yeah.
It's
not very encouraging, is it?
As they would say on Pod Save America, it's not great, Dan. It's very. I mean, like, I'm not a Dragon Age fan, but I'm rooting for Dragon Age 4 because not only do I feel like that's the last shot that Dragon Age has to remain a huge, major series. I think it's BioWare Edmonton's last shot.
It might be. I mean,
I feel like EA. I mean,
for
EA has.
It'll be their last shot.
Well, I mean, like company.
You think EA may like shut down
EA will
BioWare
shut
Edmonton?
That shit down.
Wow.
If this thing doesn't sell up to spec.
Well, EA certainly has a history of doing that kind of crap.
I'm honestly surprised that they haven't done. I mean, I was worried that Anthem would be that, but Anthem sold really well.
It's because of Dragon Age 4.
But Anthem sold really well. So
EA,
it
so
didn't
will
last
Dragon
the way
Age
it's
4.
supposed to.
It will sell pretty well.
Yeah,
Inquisition
I hope so.
sold real well.
I mean, if there's one thing we've learned, a big action RPG, and I mean like size, not just like big. I mean, like a big action RPG can get traction.
Oh yeah.
Pretty easily.
Well, the other thing about it too is that they last so long that the tail on social media, on YouTube, is much longer.
And
people get into Let's Plays for them more.
And people get attached to the characters, and fan bases form around the cast. And Dragon. All you got to do is, to a Dragon Age fan, is mention Dragon Age or a character name, and they'll just start talking about who they romance and who their ships are, and this character or that character. And I hate this character, and I love this character, and hate the And Mass Effect. I mean, I'll do that with Mass Effect if you bring up Mass Effect to me. But like, you're right. Like, there's a huge tail on these things. There's an attachment to them. There is, look at how many people are still clamoring for Mass Effect to be remastered. I mean, it is getting remastered, but like that was the thing people just yelled about because they want to have this thing move forward and be preserved. Yeah. There was a very unfair announcement a couple days ago where a KOTOR 2 announcement went up and it turned out to be for the mobile version. And I was like, you jerks. I know that wasn't BioWare, but I just been on my mind a couple of days where I'm just like, that is not the announcement I'm waiting for.
Yeah. Do you think
but at least it proves they haven't forgotten about it.
Do you think that Casey leaving at this point in time specifically is a big deal? Because you got to figure a lot of the scenarios have all been written. I mean, the game's probably done like 80-85%. They're just finishing off.
Oh, you think?
Parts
I think that game is way less done.
Really?
Than that. Oh yeah, I think Dragon Age 4 is still a couple years out.
Whoa!
Wow! But you might still be right in terms of like in terms of what his job would be, like in terms of the framework and structure and what everything is. Like you might be right that his job is sort of done,
mostly
and what's left is to sort of guide it through with that plan. And maybe he doesn't feel like that's worth his time, like, or maybe he wants to go. I mean, he just wants
to leave for the really crappy part of game development,
or he's got to go. Maybe he wants to go found his own studio or go work on something else.
The part where you have to finish stuff.
He is veteran enough that he can kind of pick and choose his gigs.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me. He's like, he did the high level stuff and this is what the game needs to be. And now it's kind of in the trenches work from here on out. And maybe he doesn't feel he needs to do that or doesn't want to do it, which is completely fair. I think, it's his career. It's his life. If that's not if he doesn't want to stay another winter in Edmonton, I get it.
Hard to argue against that. Yeah. That's what you're right, though. He's getting out right now before it really gets bad up there.
Yeah. Send me somewhere where it's like 20.
Yeah, that's an upgrade. Think about that. Like, that's a huge upgrade for him.
Yeah.
Edmonton is not a great place to live. No offense to anyone who lives in Edmonton. I was there once, and I was good. It's like, I don't need to come back here again.
I heard many stories. Blair Herter went there to do a segment for us for, I think it was Dragon Age Inquisition. He was up there, and he happened to be there on the coldest day in Edmonton in like 15 years.
And that is saying something,
and
man.
Flew out and landed. He had to get a connecting flight back to LA in Vegas, and he got snowed in Vegas. That's how cold it was that week. It was snowing in Vegas, and the Las Vegas airport had to shut down because of it.
Because they're not used to any snow.
They're not.
They get half an inch, it's all over.
It wasn't like it was like a foot of snow. It was like 3 inches of snow.
All it takes.
But like in Vegas, that's like, no, we're over. Like it's over.
The life is over at that point.
Burn the city down. We're done. Like,
I can't imagine what would happen to LA if it snowed 3 inches here.
Oh my God! Well, we know what happens in San Francisco. Johnny Mosley makes a video game.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that. That's so funny. How did that start? What would happen if it snowed in San Francisco? That's how they start that whole video game.
Start Johnny Mosley's mad tricks. Look it up.
That's right. We reviewed that on X-Play, by the way.
Oh, we reviewed it and we hammered.
We had a lot of fun with
it. Once
a
year forever after that. It was.
So, Matt, what do you think are the long-term implications of these two guys leaving, if any? Or is it to the point with BioWare that there aren't any long-term implications because our standards for the studio have fallen so far?
I mean, well, yeah, you might be right about the falling standards. I think Dragon Age 4 feels like, hey, can it just maybe be as good as Inquisition?
Yeah.
At this point?
I'm starting to feel that way about it.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I certainly don't expect a Mass Effect 2 out of this thing. Yeah. Or even a KOTOR 1. I just want I want something about as good as Greedfall, if we're being honest.
That's not too much to ask, really.
No,
that's an indie game. BioWare should be able to hit that.
But that company, Spiders, has made that, and the Technomancer, they are clearly working in the BioWare model, the old style BioWare model, and they're doing it better than BioWare at this point.
Well, they're getting to that point where they're starting to rub up against them for sure.
Yeah, Greedfall feels like something that could have been made by BioWare between Mass Effect 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And I think, whatever Spiders' next game is, I think we saw I don't remember the name of it. It's it looks like some kind of Revolutionary War thing with steampunk or whatever. I think another game, their next game, I said that when Greedfall came out, their next game could easily be high level BioWare quality, like Golden Age BioWare quality.
Well, every game they release is just a little bit better than the one before.
A little bit more solid. Still got the Euro jank, but it's not like we didn't have that in the BioWare games too. They're big, big games.
We get that in a lot of big games.
And we'll get to that.
We will, absolutely. Not too long from now. Does this change your hype level for Dragon Age 4 at all?
Not really, because my hype level for Dragon Age 4 is very subdued. It's more of a like, guys, you come on through.
I'm hoping to be pleasantly surprised by it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really rooting. It's like rooting for the Jets. I really, it's like being a Mets fan. I guess it's just like I'm rooting for them,
but I'm not expecting much.
I'm ready to be disappointed, but I'm rooting for. That doesn't dampen my. My support.
Yeah.
I love BioWare. BioWare's made some of my favorite games of all time. Like I said, I just went back to play KOTOR 1 probably for like the 7th or 8th time this past weekend. That's a 17-year-old game.
Mm-hmm.
How many 17-year-old RPGs can you go back to? Most of them are BioWare games.
The only ones are basically like text-based RPGs.
Yeah, like you're going back to play like Zork and KOTOR and Baldur's Gate 2.
And Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah,
which was like one of the best text-only games, I think, that I played when I was a young one.
I don't think many text adventure fans would disagree with you.
Trying to get the Babblefish out of the vending machine. Yep. It's great. I loved that game.
You didn't need graphics for that game.
You didn't. Your imagination just filled it all in. All I had to do was look at the art on the cover of the book. That's it. Because that art tells you a lot about the universe and the tone and all that. And
that was a thing that that everyone wonders, like, how come the art on Atari 2600 cartridges is so good? Because it's all we had.
They had to tell the story with the box art.
You had to tell me what I was supposed to think I was looking at.
Imagine it is. Yeah. It's so crazy. So anyway, there you go. Another defection from BioWare. I'm hoping that by the time you guys watch this, and you've already watched the Game Awards, that we're all blown away by Dragon Age 4, and we're like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be a next level thing. I hope that's the case. Right now, definitely not tracking that direction.
But more realistically, it's not done yet.
Yeah.
Just keep the faith.
Yeah, let's keep an open mind.
That'll be my post-show message that we don't know whether we're right or not. Just don't panic yet.
Yeah.
In the tradition of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, don't panic.
Although exactly. Although I would say this: if it looks terrible today, you might want to panic.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's put a pre-order down yet, right?
Yeah, and they haven't announced a release date either, so they have some wiggle room there. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about probably the biggest indie game that has released in the last, few weeks. And we don't get to talk about indie games all that much here on GameFace because Matt and I are always slam talking about all the big stuff. But our correspondent, Vincent Borchardt, has decided to check out a game called Haven, and I talked to him about it, and here's his report.
Are you all right? Eat that. Eat it!
All right, we're here with our field reporter, Vincent Borchardt, who is going to talk to us about Haven. It's an indie game that's kind of a mashup of a bunch of different genres. I have not played it, but I did look into it a little bit to make sure I didn't sound like a fool talking to you about it. And it sounds like it's a mix of like a puzzle adventure and a turn-based RPG. Is that right?
Yeah, sort of. It's weird. Like, there's 3 parts. It's like part visual novel, part like just exploration stuff, and part RPG.
Okay. Which would you say of those 3 has the biggest focus as far as the playtime is concerned?
Visual novel by far.
Okay,
like,
so the story is the most prevalent element of it then.
Yes, definitely. Like, that's one of the things that surprised me. This originally got on my radar a year ago when they had a demo for it as part of the last Game Awards. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I'd say about half and half RPG and visual novel at that point. Mm-hmm. But that's what I was expecting. But now that I've played it, it's a lot more visual novel than I thought it was going to be.
Now, because that's the case, first of all, fill us in on the story. And secondly, talk to us about whether it's good or not.
So the setup is that you have a couple, Kay and you, who wound up on a deserted planet.
Now, they were fleeing their homeland because it was like they were like arranged marriages or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird, like the story. I was like, I've never heard a game plot like that before.
Yeah.
So they flee their planet. Is it their planet or is it just a different area on the planet that they were living on?
They flee to a new planet to find this new one that's all it's all with these floating islands, and there's earthquakes and stuff.
So they flee their planet, but the one that they go to sounds like it's terrible.
I mean, it's not terrible, but the point is that it's a deserted planet, and then they can't find anyone there but some of the native creatures.
Okay, and so they decide to settle the planet, or are they trying to get back to their home planet? What's their goal?
So the way the game starts is you've got your ship that you crash landed on. Your goal is to try to fix it up. And but then
to
as
go
you're
home
doing,
or to just find another planet?
Let's get a closer look.
You do that. They ran away because they didn't want to go back. But then as you start to go and fix up your ship just because you want to make it better, then they find you. Like they start sending these evil.
Oh, your home planet finds where you've run off to.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And then
the intrigue ensues.
Yes.
Okay.
Don't want to spoil that much about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is it good? Did you enjoy the story?
I'd say it's a very interesting story. I mean, the story comes out in pieces. There's basically like the plot is it's hard to. It just comes out in pieces. Like
you'll play the game for a long time, and then there's a ton of exposition just dumped on you at once.
Yeah, like I'll get into this in a bit, but there was a part where I was trying to find how to get to the next story plot, and it was like, oh, they're kind of trying to find you, and then I go to this next part, and then, oh, here's the actual plot, and actually starts to explain a bunch of the stuff all in one shot, but I won't get into that specifically.
Okay. Now, one thing I did see, looking through some footage of this game, it appears that there's like a Super Mario Sunshine mechanic. Like
I was going to make
like
the same comparison.
Or
yeah, so the main visual distinction is that you can glide over the planet using this generic energy substance that they call flow.
Okay.
And then you use this flow, and you can, as you glide over it, you can clean up the red stuff you see called rust.
Okay.
It's kind of similar but different to flow. And you use it to do different things. Like you need to, when you find the red stuff, you have these larger red things that give you the rust, these crude rust, fine rust, etc. You can use that as one of the things you can craft. You can use to craft, most notably, the things to fix your ship. You can also use it to craft healing.
So is that how you rebuild your ship? You collect stuff out in the world, and you come back and craft parts for the ship?
Yeah, you need to find just a bunch of generic rust, and then you find the actual main piece that you use to fix it.
Gotcha.
That's kind of the way this progression works.
And then there's a cooking system too, right?
Yeah, you find a bunch of different fruits and other herbs, like the apple dews that are everywhere.
And then what do you do with it? What can you craft?
You cook them, and you have there's a hunger system that...
I hate hunger systems, Vincent.
It's not that bad.
Okay.
As far as I can tell is that the only consequence of being too hungry is that some of the super attacks are a little harder to do, which we'll get into in the RPG section. But I don't think you die if you go hungry.
Okay. In the game, I actually saw like very specific mentions about the game being very easy. That it's not meant to challenge the player as far as the turn-based combat is concerned.
Yeah, the combat is weird because it's not that complex. You basically have two different types of attacks. You have a punch and you have an energy blast. And then you can combine if you have each character.
So you have a two-person party, basically, and it never gets bigger, right? It's just always you and your girlfriend or the girlfriend.
As far as I can tell.
Okay. And then you can do chain-up attacks, though, with your partner, right?
Yeah, you get if you do them both at the same time, then you time it. You can do, like, a super attack.
But I'm guessing the way that they regulate that is it's on a cooldown in some way.
There's no real cooldown. Basically, in order to use any attack, you hold the button until the meter fills up, and then it happens. Or at least it's supposed to happen. One of my complaints is that since the combat is so simple, you only have two attacks, a shield, and then like a finishing thing where you pacify the creatures. Because one character has 4 directions of the D-pad, and the other character has the 4 buttons. And then
so there aren't very many attacks, which means that combat is probably pretty simple and not especially strategic.
Yeah, the goal is that you're supposed to do it timing, like the idea that you can have one person shield when you know that the creature is attacking, and then you can time your attacks so that you hit them while they're attacking, have their weak spot exposed.
So there's
At
like
least
a
that's the
rhythm to
point.
it. Is what
Yeah,
you're
that's
saying?
the point,
Okay.
but it's everything's so imprecise, it's hard to do that.
What do you mean? The controls are too imprecise?
Like you'll charge up an attack and it'll act like it's going, but then it'll just wait because the enemy's in the middle of the attack, or because it thinks it is, or I don't know.
Okay, so there's some hitches with the turn-based combat is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Enough
I'm
to
actively avoiding
spoil
battles
the
at this
experience,
point.
though?
Honestly, a little.
Really?
I'm actively avoiding battles.
Do
So
you
part
need
of it
them?
is that... What?
Do you need them? Do you have to take part in battles? Like, do you get a resource from combat that you
You get more rust from doing battles, and you get the experience, but you don't get that much.
Okay.
You get a lot more experience from the different visual novel scenes.
That's strange.
Yeah. A lot of this
so
game
you
is
get
strange.
EXP for just watching conversations, basically.
Yeah, like if you eat, you'll like go through a cutscene and then you'll get it. Because I think because instead of like leveling up instead of growing stronger, you grow closer emotionally.
Okay.
Like the whole level up
bond
ceremony
between the
is
two
you go get drunk and you go talk. That's what happens.
Oh, interesting.
when you fill up the meter of a quote unquote experience, you like go to the ship, you go celebrate with an apple brew.
Oh.
Yeah.
So now it appears that there were some choices in the gameplay that I watched for dialogue where you could actually make decisions. Have you seen that has had any sort of impact on anything later on in the game? Like, have you made a decision where later on you're like, oh crap, wow, that thing I decided earlier has had an impact here later?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't even like. There's a bunch of different dialogue from the choices, which is neat. But other than that, like the only other difference I see is that some of the choices say like, "You has grown more confident," and I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, I was like, so how does that impact what they do in the game? And you don't know.
I do not know.
So you don't see it make any appreciable increase in your character stats or anything?
No.
Interesting. Okay. How much is this game selling for, Vincent?
It's $25.
How do you feel about that? How long did it take you to finish it?
I'm 7.5 hours in, and it's weird. It seemed like there should be a lot more, like, ignoring the one part where I was trying to find when I was trying to find the progress, because, like, they have the flow threads, and you have to clean up the rust, and I just missed
I know.
one
That's something else I want to ask you about, actually.
Yeah.
It looks like there's like on rails gameplay in some way. It like you hop onto like a blue like rail and you can just fly on it around the environments. What is that?
Yeah, so there's basically two ways. The ones on the ground are they're kind of like filling up your water tank of your flow, like comparison to sunshine. So if you run out of flow, you got to go find one of those to fill back up.
Okay.
And then early in the game, you get the ability to fly on the aerial flow threads for a while, and that a lot of the exploration part is just trying to find the right flow thread that'll get you to the area with the next flow bridge to get to the next floating island.
Okay, but you can move around freely in the world, right? You're not always moving on rails.
Right.
Okay, yeah. That was kind of confusing to me because I saw footage. It looked like they were controlling it, but then most of the footage showed them on rails in some way. So that's good to hear. Do you feel like that's a worthy addition to the game? Does it need that stuff?
I mean, it's interesting the first time trying to control it, drifting to go along the rails, because later in the game they get a little more turny, but...
So there's a skill to it, is what you're saying?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's cool.
But
I thought it was just like automatic, like you locked on and you're locked onto the rail. Okay, then that's totally fine. So you said it's $25. What platforms is the game available for?
Right now it's available for PC, Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PS5, and it's going to come to Switch and PS4 later.
Interesting. So it's out for PS5 before PS4.
Yeah, I'm assuming they just couldn't get it to run on the other consoles.
Yeah,
but
or they're
Xbox
just like,
makes
let's
it
strike
easy.
while the iron's hot. Everyone needs games for their new PS5. It probably will do better on PS5, I would guess. I mean, this game is sitting at like an 8 Metacritic right now. And that's certainly not going to hurt its sales either. But do you recommend that people buy it? You said you're 7 hours in, you're not done. That seems pretty good for a $25 game.
I mean, it seems a little expensive for $25,
Yeah,
but the important thing is that it's on
there.
Game Pass.
Ah,
Yeah,
there you go.
that's how I'm playing it.
Okay. Do you think maybe some of the issues that you had, have you downloaded it, or are you streaming it on xCloud?
I downloaded it on my PC and I'm
So
playing
I was going to
it.
ask you if maybe you thought some of the hitches in the controls might have something to do with xCloud, but if it's downloaded, then that has nothing to do with it at all. So you think it's a little steep, or you recommending people maybe wait till it comes down to like 20 or 15 to take the plunge?
20, 15 maybe, or just get it on Game Pass.
Right.
Because I have a feeling this is going to be an acquired taste. You got to care about the story.
Okay.
If you're here for gameplay, this is not the game for you.
Okay. And right now they're running crazy deals on Game Pass. You can get Game Pass Ultimate for 3 months for $1 right now if you haven't done a free trial already. I have, so I can't get that deal. But if you have not had Xbox Game Pass, then you can play this game and so many others for literally 33 cents a month for the next 3 months. So no-brainer if you haven't done it yet. Haven may be the last on your list when you get on Xbox Game Pass because there's so much good stuff on there. Vincent, thank you very much for taking the time to play Haven, jumping on a game that Matt and I did not have time for, and we'll talk to you soon.
Make way.
Awesome!
Well done.
Thank you, Vincent, for checking out Haven. As I said, we don't cover a ton of indie stuff on the show, but we like to spotlight stuff that really catches our eye, and Haven is definitely one of them. And best of all, as he said, you can get it on Xbox Game Pass. So really, for $1, you can get 3 months of Game Pass Ultimate right now. You can check out that game and so many others, basically for free. But it sounds like even if you don't want to get on Game Pass, the game is probably close to worth what they're asking for it. So there you go, Haven. Thanks again, Vincent, for checking it out. It's time for us to move on. We're going to talk about the next BioShock, franchise near and dear to both of our hearts, although I think probably the first two games more so than BioShock Infinite. No?
No, BioShock. I mean, Infinite is no BioShock 1, but I like it better than 2.
Yeah.
I think
I loved BioShock Infinite. But that's another
BioShock 2
case.
is the black sheep.
It
of
is. Well, BioShock Infinite, people hated it because they felt like it was a departure from the franchise, or too drastically from the franchise.
Well, that's funny because my complaint about BioShock Infinite is it's not enough of one.
No, interesting.
I think
a lot of people complain it was just a shooter.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and I think part of that is because they sort of had to punt on getting it done and getting it out the door. But all the shooting mechanics and all the kind of the upgrade stuff are basically lifted from BioShock 1.
Yeah.
And I have always had a theory that they had a lot of more intricate and more ambitious ideas about how that would all work, but they couldn't really get it to work properly. So in the end, because I think when they brought Rod Ferguson in, I feel like he came in and said, just make it like BioShock 1.
Yeah.
Just make it tonics, make it, all that stuff and upgrade it like that. And let's do that. I think there are too many gunfights in it, especially near the end. But
it just turned into a shooter eventually.
Yeah. But the departure sense of the idea that BioShock shouldn't constantly take place in Rapture, the idea that BioShock should be an exploration of kind of philosophy and political ideas of the modern and turn of the 19th, 20th century and early 20th century and mid 20th century as sort of envisioned through fantastical communities is a good one. I think the idea of objectivism.
That's why
being
I love the
examined,
franchise.
Yeah, exactly. Because you examine objectivism through through the lens of Rapture, and you examine kind of American exceptionalism and sort of the post-dispensationalist millennialism, millennial dispensationalism as a flying city, literally a flying aspiration called Columbia after the name of the goddess we based our secular free society on in terms of a mascot. That's really good. Mm-hmm. And you could do something real interesting with communism too, like an underground. I always wanted an underground volcano-based city communism BioShock. That would be because you've done the air, you've done the water, now you got to do fire. Now you got to do underground.
Just hit all the elements.
Yeah.
Well, the big rumor this week about the next BioShock, and keep in mind that 2K has launched a brand new studio just to create the new BioShock. None of that information is really public yet, but if you work in the industry and you talk to people, you know what's going on. And the truth is...
the old studio's gone, so they got to do something.
And obviously the lead developer from the last couple BioShock games has moved on, and he's working on his own game now.
I guess we're never getting that Vita version, huh?
Doesn't look like it. So this is a brand new studio working on an IP that a lot of people really resonate with. And a lot of people have been wondering what's going to happen. Is it going to be what Matt sort of described as BioShock, or is it going to be something new? And this week we kind of got our answer. It leaked out that the new BioShock is going to be an open world RPG. Matt, how do you feel about that? Do you think BioShock should stay what it was, which is kind of really this linear kind of Gen 7 style action adventure, or if it needs to come into the future and be a part of what, at this point, really is the best-selling genre in the industry?
Here's the thing, like, it's been a long time since BioShock Infinite. Mm-hmm. It's been almost 8 years.
That
going
blows
early
me
next
away
year.
That it's been 8 years.
Because that was early 2013 that came out. And I would say that I am separated enough from that series at this point that they can do whatever the hell they want. Like, if it turns out to not be what I want from BioShock, if it turns out to not be a worthy successor to BioShock, we've still got BioShock 1 and BioShock Infinite and Minerva's Den, like this perfect little set of BioShock things, and it can be whatever it's going to be. If it is a great revival of it, and because I don't get me wrong, clearly I love open world action RPGs. If they find a way to make that work with BioShock, super down with it. Awesome. It's just hard to picture.
It is hard to picture because when I think of BioShock, and I'll talk about this a little bit as well when we talk about Cyberpunk. When I think about BioShock, I think about these kind of curated, self-contained, discrete moments that you have in the game. And the old design of the classic action adventure is perfect for it. You don't have these kind of overarching systems that are all tying together and talking to each other. You can kind of just do whatever the heck you want and then just end it and then just move on to the next thing. When you're talking about open world action RPGs, though, that really doesn't work because you have the whole world to consider and all the NPCs and all the weapons and all the crafting materials, all this stuff that all has to work together and be balanced somehow. It just organically creates this overarching theme for a game, or an overarching, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for, almost like an algorithm that works for the entirety of the game. And so I wonder if changing to that structure of a game is going to work for something like BioShock. I'm not convinced that it will, but I would say that God of War gives me some hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do it. God of War is a good example. My example of kind of what you're talking about there with like kind of balancing the set piece design areas with the open world thing would be Arkham City.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Arkham City takes kind of a Zelda approach where you have a big open world, but you play the meat of the story driven stuff in sort of handcrafted dungeons. Arkham City has dungeons. Like that's basically what those are when you go in a building and do a sequence, and that's what it is.
Come out of the building
so I think you can do like an open. You could I'm sure it won't take place there, but you could explore Rapture in an open world. But then when it's time to fight Sander Cohen, you go into a theater and the whole thing takes place in there,
Yeah, I mean, remember, too, that God of War wasn't, or isn't, a truly open-world game.
Right.
It looks open world while you're playing it, but technically it's really not.
Yeah, it's open air. It's, I'd say the closest analog to God of War's kind of overall design in that regard is Witcher 2.
Yeah.
Like Witcher 2 has giant areas to run around in, but it is not an open world game.
Yeah.
Obviously, God of War, you can backtrack more, but it is God of War does a good job of feeling like it's an open world, but really it's a series of handcrafted locations that kind of connect up into a convincing world. I would say
that's a good way to describe it. And that I think could work for BioShock.
Yeah,
the true open world, like Destiny, that type of stuff, I struggle to really see how that works.
I wouldn't want like Just Cause BioShock.
Right.
You know, like that's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a sandbox.
One way or the other, no, it's not a sandbox thing. I think you could do a thing where you have the city as an explorable area, especially if they're taking cues from Cyberpunk. We'll get to that. But like in terms of kind of making the city a character in the game, like there's a lot of opportunity there. I think a new BioShock game, whether it's BioShock style or open world style, lives or dies by its concept. Do they have a good idea? Do they have a reason to make this? Do they have the balls to keep making this political and philosophical commentary? Because God knows you could make a very relevant BioShock now after the events of the last half decade.
Absolutely.
Yep. You know, does 2K have the balls to do that?
Does it have the chops? Does the new studio have the chops to pull
who
this
are
off?
these people who can do it? Yeah, and like, I think the answer to that is maybe.
Yeah.
Like 2K publishes GTA. It's not like they're afraid of controversy.
Yep.
You want free advertising? You make a BioShock game that kind of deals with the alt-right in a metaphorical way. Sort of like how the First Order does in Star Wars. Yep. And I think you got some at the very least, Fox News will yell about you. So like that's
that'll reach a lot of people.
Yeah,
for sure.
So there's something there. Like I bet you. So you basically need a point of view and you need a compelling location.
Yep. But there's more to it than that. I mean,
there is, but like
there's a lot of secret sauce in BioShock as far as how it handles stuff.
But if you don't start with those two things, you're doomed.
You're doomed. Yeah, you have no chance if you don't start with those two. You're right.
I mean, obviously, you need more than that because we've played BioShock 2, and they had the same things in that regard that BioShock 1 did, and it didn't work.
Yeah, there's something special that's sprinkled on those games that make them feel like any other franchise, to be honest with you. I
mean, to be honest, my instinct on that is to say that the special sauce is Ken Levine.
Yeah.
And his people he had working with him. Yeah. Not to get gross about it, but like I don't want to say that Ken Levine's special sauce, but like those games were a brainchild of him and his inner circle, who are not going to be involved in this probably, except maybe tangentially. But like. So that's a concern. It's a big
concern.
At the same time, those games, when was BioShock 1? 2007?
6, I think.
6? Was that old?
I think so. For some reason, that's the date that popped in my head.
So the problem with like some of these, with some of these games that go back that far, and I do this too. Like I think they're the year before they came out because I was doing segments on them the year before.
We're covering it the year before. Yeah. That's probably true.
It is August 2007.
Okay.
But regardless, BioShock has been around long enough, and because that's 13 years ago. BioShock has been around enough that there are people who grew up with BioShock.
Yes, absolutely.
There are developers now, young, hungry developers in their mid to late 20s who were 12, teenagers when they played BioShock for the first time. And those guys and girls know how to what BioShock is and what BioShock should be. So because a lot of times you see that, and so here's an anecdote on that. Where I have been reading a curated thing of all the DC Crises storylines that go from like 1962 to like the end of Final Crisis, which is a span of like 40 years of comics.
Wow.
More than 40, more like 50. And so it starts in the Silver Age with all this nonsense, and it goes to the 70s for the Bronze Age stuff, and there's like kind of the stuff that Super Friends is based on, and it hits the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Which is a big crossover weirdo thing that is very confusing if you haven't read the last 25 years of DC comics. And I've read it before, but
like everybody
after reading kind of that backstory, like of all that, I read all these backstory things, and then I read Crisis. It's the first time I've ever understood Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was amazing. It was not worth the effort, but it was.
But you got there eventually.
And that was written by Marv Wolfman, who did a bunch of cartoons in the 80s, like Ninja Turtles and stuff. Then through this curation series, it's like a list of things you're supposed to read in what order. You get to Animal Man, which is a series about a guy. He's a superhero, old superhero in the DC universe who can basically, if he's near an animal, he can take on their abilities. That's his superpower. And Grant Morrison, who's a writer that people know from, Grant Morrison did JLA, and he did, he's non-binary now. They are non-binary. They did a bunch of some of the greatest stuff. He did. Grant Morrison did New X-Men, the reboot of X-Men after the movies and everything. They're a really talented writer, and one of the first things they did that was a big deal was Animal Man, because Animal Man is basically, over the course of the series, over the course of the series, the thing that happens is there's a character named the Psycho Pirate who's the only character in the DC universe that remembers there was a multiverse before the Crisis on Infinite Earths made it one universe. And Animal Man basically realizes that he is a character in a comic book.
Oh, really? So he breaks the fourth wall.
At the end of the series, he meets Grant Morrison in Grant Morrison's house and confronts him over all the shit that Grant Morrison has put him through.
Wow, that's crazy.
And Grant Morrison basically says, like, sorry.
It's my job.
It's my job, and I probably should have been, but I ran out of ideas and kind of turned you into my own mouthpiece for environmental issues, and I'm sorry about that. So now I'm just going to put everything back the way it was, and Grant Morrison puts everything back the way it was. And
interesting.
And but this is like 1986, 87, and going through maybe 89. And it's this, 10 years earlier, I'm reading these stupid Super Friends stories. And within 8 years, Grant Morrison has kind of broken the fourth wall, and they've taken this idea and turned it on its head, because Grant Morrison grew up reading these comics. And the instant you get someone who grew up with something that was sort of a cultural or pop culture touchstone for them, they are going to not only internalize it and make it an important part of their identity, but they are going to want to take it further, examine it, take it apart, and look at it. And so that's why I say, with someone who grew up with BioShock, I would trust them, certainly if someone's a talented developer or creative director.
If they're a big fan, right?
If they're a big fan, they are going to be able to take this thing, know why it works, know how it works, know what makes it tick, and sort of turn it inside out and make it something different. Because that's what you saw with some stuff like Animal Man, where it's like these writers and artists took these characters that had been around for 30 years all through their childhood and said, we're going to reinvent this because we have thoughts about this that the people who created it never did.
Right.
So that's why when I say BioShock's been around enough for someone to grow up with it, that's what I mean. You can give this to people for who BioShock is one of their kind of foundational video games of their childhood or youth or teenage years. And I'm going to, depending on who it is, I'm going to trust them to know what BioShock should become in a way that maybe the people that have, the people that made BioShock are,
Yeah, I mean, maybe Ken Levine isn't even up to that anymore.
Right. Maybe I don't trust me to make a new X-Play.
Yeah.
Anymore.
No, I get it. I get it.
We had our time.
Yeah.
And it's time to see what this new generation that grew up with this stuff can make it into, because that is, especially in the modern day of kind of the recycling of pop culture over and over again, that's where the most interesting stuff has consistently come from over the last 15, 20 years.
Well, it's most likely to. I mean, iteration is much more likely to hit than building something from scratch.
Or look at, this is in the news right now, look at Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The reason Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was something new and different and something that contrasted with how weird and kind of studio reinvention-y the X-Men movies were was because Sam Raimi grew up reading Spider-Man.
Yep.
And it took someone who grew up with this material, getting old enough to have the power and the clout to sort of say, give me $100 million to make a Spider-Man movie, and I'm going to make it into that Steve Ditko Silver Age Spider-Man that I loved.
Yeah.
And then we got a good Spider-Man movie. And that's what happened. I'm not saying we have that problem with BioShock. We haven't never gotten a good BioShock video game. But I'm saying handing these things over, these very specialized and very esoteric things over to people who grew up with them and internalize them is almost always the best idea. If you really feel the need to reboot or reinvent them in that regard. So I hope 2K is looking towards maybe a younger generation that knows BioShock and loves it in a way that they can kind of take that love and turn it into something new.
I would agree that at a certain point, it's better to hand it over to someone new than for the same person to keep doing it. I think another example of that is a little more related to gaming is God of War. Look at how many different directors the franchise has had. You had Jaffe, who came up with the idea, started it, basically created the whole first game and most of the second one. Then you had Stig step in. And he handled a couple entries, and then you have Corey come in. And all of them have done an amazing job and put their own spin on it. And the ultimate end result is that God of War has become better with every entry. So I hear you.
No, maybe not Ascension.
Yeah, well, does that count? I mean, that was done by another studio, right? That wasn't done by Santa Monica.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was.
I thought I thought it was them.
I thought they had farmed
What
that
else
out
were
to
they
someone.
making?
But maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you just wish.
It could be. I don't remember much about it, which
No,
should
it's
tell
Santa
you all.
Monica.
Is it Sony Santa Monica?
It was not Stig though. It was someone else directing.
Interesting. So anyway, there is certainly hope for BioShock. Not all hope is lost because Ken Levine isn't working on it anymore. I also have a feeling Ken's a good guy, and if that new studio is working on it and they want to take him out to lunch or dinner or something, I don't think he's going to turn him down.
Oh yeah, like it's always worth keeping the old creator in the loop. I think you even see that with modern Star Wars, like Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni is one of the brains behind Mandalorian and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I guarantee he and Favreau, even in the behind the scenes stuff, you see them bring Lucas on and show him what's going on and stuff like that. It's always worth knowing what the original creator thinks,
because sometimes all it takes is one comment from that person.
Yeah. And yes, Ken Levine, I did just compare you to George Lucas. That's how much I like BioShock 1.
So there you go. That's the latest update on, I don't know if this is going to end up being called like BioShock Subtitle or BioShock 3. Right now we have it on the site as BioShock 3, but...
I think it'd be BioShock 4, because I think BioShock 3 was Infinite, more or less.
Do you think they would really call it 4, though? Even though they've never had a
I think internally
3?
they might. Right. I think it's going to be BioShock
Subtitle.
Word.
Yeah.
No colon. Colons are, I don't know if you know this,
they're
but
going
colons
away.
Are out. Colons are long gone.
I talked about this a few weeks ago, or actually like a month or so ago, though, about how frustrating it is and how Ubisoft will actually put the colon in and then remove it and then put it back in. It's maddening.
Ubi's marketing believes that colons are passé, but like there's another faction in Ubi that believes that colons make more sense, and they're right.
They are right.
But apparently Ubi marketing thinks that punctuation is bad. I don't know. Yeah. So if you look back, like I don't think they've had a colon in an Assassin's Creed title since like Unity.
It's been a while. Yep. Yeah, it's been a few years. So anyway, that is the next BioShock. I'm guessing we don't see this until 2023.
Yeah.
I mean, they have been working on it for a while now. The studio formed a little over a year ago, but they're still in pre-production right now. There's a long, long way to go. But that's probably why we're starting to hear stuff, is because they are doing pre-production and they're starting to figure out what the game is going to be.
I'm a little surprised that it took this long. Not that it took this long, but like... I'm a little surprised that no one's tried to do a BioShock TV series.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Like a Netflix show.
I mean, you look at some of these properties they're picking up for shows, and it's like, really? That can't even scratch BioShock's balls.
Yeah, like if I saw the success of The Witcher, and I know The Witcher is based on the books more than the game, but let's face it, that show happened because the games are popular.
Yeah, of course.
If I was looking at that as a TV development exec or whatever, and I knew video games, like my first stop would be BioShock.
Yeah, it's freaking amazing. It's the visual, everything about it is memorable. So I'm right there with you, and I think it will happen eventually. It's just got to. It makes too much sense. Okay, it's time to move on to our last topic of GameFace 240. And hi, everybody who just used the timestamps to jump to this topic.
You missed a really good Animal Man conversation.
Yeah, you guys missed a lot. Go back and watch the rest of the show. I do not begrudge you guys for jumping straight to our discussion about Cyberpunk 2077. I know everyone on Sifted is going to do it, everyone on Patreon is going to do it, and everyone on YouTube is going to do it. And welcome. Here we are, finally, after so many years, ready to discuss Cyberpunk 2077. It started 8 years ago with a teaser trailer that just kind of flew under the radar. No one really paid any attention to. That was out there then for like the next 2 or 3, 4 years. And then finally, CD Projekt Red shows us the game at E3. Everyone freaks out, myself included. And the rest is history. It's been a torrid marketing schedule for the game. It has disappeared for patches, but the last 18 months, it's just been steady. In fact, Los Angeles right now is completely covered in Cyberpunk 2077 billboards. They are everywhere. I was talking to my wife about this game, and I'm like, this is like the biggest game that's come out in like the last half decade. And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I don't recognize the title of it now, because usually she's like, well, that's probably Halo or Mario or Zelda. I was like, no, it's this game called Cyberpunk. And she's like, oh, I haven't really heard of it. I'm like, you've seen the billboards all over town. And she sat there for a second and thought, and she goes, are they yellow? And I was like, yes, they are. And she's like, you're right. I have seen them everywhere. So this
I
town,
hate that yellow, but like it works.
It works. Yep. Like this town is draped in yellow right now for Cyberpunk 2077. Matt and I, as we said in the open, but again, some of you guys may have jumped directly to this topic. We've been playing it since Monday evening. Neither of us have finished the game. I would say, if you guys know GameFace, you've watched a lot of episodes, and you've watched Matt discuss open world games, you know where he is. He's grinding through all the little stuff, not necessarily going through the main path. I have been primarily going through the main path, but the difference is Matt has spent more time with it. So we've basically...
I think we're both at the same place, more or less.
Right,
though.
we're at the same spot in the campaign, but Matt, I think you've actually experienced much more of the game than I have.
What level are you?
I don't even know. That's a good question.
I'm level 12 right now.
I'm probably the last level I remember, but like they happen and like I don't always pick up on it every time.
Well, because you've got the two. You've also got the street cred versus the character level, and yeah.
The last one I remember is level 10, so we're roughly around the same. But yeah, you're probably a couple levels ahead of me because you've been doing more of the side stuff. For the purposes of this discussion, and this is going to be a lengthy discussion, so buckle up. We're going to break it down into categories to try to keep everything organized to make sure that we touch on everything. And there is a lot to touch on. Probably the way we should start it is to let everybody know what the plot in this game is. Because I'll be perfectly honest with you, Matt, I hadn't even really thought about it until I started to play it. I was like, wait a minute, what is the story in this game? Like, what is your goal? What is the overarching... trouble that you're trying to get out of?
For all the media they put out and all the little everything, they've been surprisingly good at not giving anything away narratively.
Well, I will say this before we get started. One, as usual, we are not going to spoil anything for you guys in this discussion or with our B-roll. All the cinematic B-roll is from the first hour of the game, and the rest of the gameplay stuff is from... I would guess anywhere from like hour 3 to like hour 6, something like that. It shows all the systems, but it's not going to spoil anything for you guys. So you guys know that you can watch our discussion. We're going to take care of you guys and not ruin anything for you. But so I went into this game completely blind on the story. And I'll be honest with you, Matt. Excuse me again. The game starts and goes on for quite a while, and I still don't know what the story is. When the game starts, the only thing that you know is you were living in whatever Atlanta is now. Things didn't work out, so you're going back to Night City. And you can start from 3 different perspectives.
Atlanta.
Well, they call it something else, but I'm assuming it's like whatever Atlanta is.
What's your origin?
Oh, so here's what I was going to say.
Are you street kid?
So the game that I am playing to completion, I'm street kid. But
because I don't know what you're talking about when you said that.
But I went back and I played also the first like 3 hours as Nomad just to try to see how different each of the campaigns is depending on which one you pick. And what I've basically figured out from the 2 campaigns is that they're different for about the first 30 to 40 minutes, and then you meet a specific character, and his name's Jackie. And then once you meet him, they're both basically the same, other than whatever class you chose at the beginning is a part of the game throughout the rest of the game. As far as
you're I have it on PlayStation and Xbox because we got the early copies we got locally or on PS4. And then I got it I had already pre-ordered on Xbox digitally, so when that went live last night, I played that. So I played Nomad and Corpo openings. And you're right, like basically the idea is you play an opening sequence that kind of deals directly with your origin, and you get screwed over and something horrible happens to you one way or another.
Yep.
And Jackie basically says okay, well, this is going to be our new life. Come on.
And that's how it starts.
You get a little montage of you just doing criminal
being
shit.
Bros. And it's like
6 months later. And then it's like, then the story. So once you get to that montage, your origin is irrelevant. It's going to be the same game from then on. It's just you get dialogue choices that are prefaced with like Nomad or Corpo or Street Kid, and you.
So don't sweat picking one of the 3 at the beginning. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah.
Mostly what you're picking is what would you like your character to know about in conversations.
Yep.
But like if you pick like Nomad, you know about stuff outside the city. You know about kind of the world and how it works outside the city. You know not to trust people.
Yeah. Nature,
survival stuff, that kind of thing. Clans, loyalty stuff, like kind of stuff that someone who never left. Because there's a whole thing in this setting where like people don't leave the city in their whole lives.
Right. Yeah.
And so the fact that you've been outside the city makes you a bit of a unicorn in that regard.
Because there's not a lot outside the cities in this world.
Whereas like my Corpo character knows how deals work. She knows what tech is out there. She knows which corporations don't like each other and which executives are who and why. And like if a corp person is doing a certain thing a certain way, she knows. She has a pretty good idea why they'd be doing it that way, whereas like the other characters might not. Like, and every time I pick a Corpo, the response to stuff like that, the other characters are always like, oh, that's a really good theory. I never would have thought of that. It's because they haven't been in that world, right?
Yep.
So there's a reward in that, but basically, it's not going to affect your stats. It's not going to affect how survivable you are. You should pick
it's all really conversations.
Yeah, you should pick your origin entirely based on what you want your character to be able to talk about.
Yep. And like for instance, as a street kid, you can kind of see through people. You're street smart. So you'll be in a conversation with someone and they'll have like the first three options, which are the same options that are there for the other two. And then the bottom will be like, oh, I'm from the street. I know this already. This is what's going on, basically.
I figured street kid would be like sees through the bullshit.
Yep, that's pretty much exactly what it is. And it does help you in some conversations because you can cut out a couple of the options and just jump straight to the chase. Because you're basically just like, I've been living on the street my whole life. BS does not compute with me. And that's why I chose the street kid, because that's pretty much how I am. So anyway, as Matt said, you get to Night City, you meet Jackie. They showed this corny montage of you guys getting drunk or killing people or whatever. Yeah. And then it jumps 6 months.
Conversely, Corpo actually does start in Night City.
Oh, you start in Night City.
Because you work for one of the corporations, obviously. And so like that's the one...
Nomad, you drive from the desert into the city.
Nomad, you drive in a big car chase, which is actually pretty great.
Yeah.
But Corpo, even if you're not going to play Corpo, I do recommend starting a game on it because you get a flying car tour of the city that's really awesome.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. I want to see
that. If you want to see like some Blade Runner shit, like start a Corpo character and just watch that beginning part. It's really cool.
So anyway, after that happens, it jumps 6 months, and that's where the story starts, and it's the same for everybody at that point.
Yeah.
And you are teamed up with Jackie, your partners in crime, but there's still, Matt, no goal. Like, I don't understand what the objective of the game is. Still at that point.
Well, your goal at that point, as Jackie and you discuss, is to make it big, basically. Like, you want to be successful criminals. That's the whole point. Like that's what Jackie talks about constantly.
It's sort of pretty lame, though, don't you think? I mean,
no, I mean that's a pretty standard crime drama thing. You know, kind of the big score, like looking for their big break to get into the big leagues, and you know, like that's the whole thing. They say that
over and over. Big league,
that's the whole thing. Is like Jackie wants to make it big as a criminal, as a whatever you want to call these guys, net runner, I guess they're called. Like and that's the kind of the setup at the beginning is like he's got a contact with one of the big fixers, the
people who give you jobs,
high-level fixers, are good people who make. And I was a little confused. It's funny the first time I went through all it because they talk about it's like, oh, it's this guy from the afterlife, and I was like, is he dead? Is he? And then like, it turns out
club.
Afterlife's a club, right? So when I played it the second time, and they're all talking about this, I'm like, oh, now I get what you're talking about. Like, because if you were in Night City, you would know that, but I didn't know that because I've never played the game before. So and the funny thing is, like, that when I looked it back up, that stuff is a reference to the old pen and paper tabletop game. Like there's a lot of stuff they are taking directly from the old 80s pen and paper game, to the point that like it's almost treating it like a next gen continuation of it. Like a lot of the characters that were in the old pen and paper game as like notable characters are referenced or like gone or around, you know, like Keanu Reeves' character is one of those. It's so there's a little bonus there if it's sort of like The Mandalorian. Like if you've seen all the other weird Star Wars content, you're going to get a little references. Like there's a lot of reference. But I played Cyberpunk 2020, which is what it was called back then. Obviously, you can't call it that now because it is 2020. I played that
not
back
sci-fi
then. So
anymore.
Slowly, some of it came back to me. Like, oh right, that was this, and this is that thing, and that was that thing. it's interesting. But yeah, so early on the story is pretty much
it's just meandering.
You want to be a really big important criminal.
Yeah,
like that's the whole thing. And then there's a theme of like in Night City, you are either a massive success or you're nobody. You know, it's the old big. It's actually a very throwback concept. It's like a ingenue coming to Hollywood in a 40s film kind of idea. You know. Cyberpunk stuff does tend to lean pretty hard on noir crime tropes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
so it does meander like that for quite a while.
Yeah, Act 1 is pretty much just you want to be a big deal criminal.
That's it. Yeah,
there's
really no objective. There's a plot, but it's basically you just talking to fixers who are giving you gigs, and you go and finish the gigs, and you're trying to rise through the ranks. And so then you get to Act 2, and for all the promotion of Keanu Reeves as being sort of the front man for this game, you don't see him until Act 2, a good handful of hours into the game. That's when he makes his big entrance into it. How much do we want to talk about Johnny? I don't want to talk about him too much because a lot of it's really spoilery.
I mean, he once you get to him, he is a major part of the game.
What I was getting at is that's when you finally have a real goal.
Yeah.
Something happens.
What's actually, we want to understand what the real core story is.
Yeah. And then it's a race against time. And that is really what the heart of the story is. I'm not going to ruin what the race against time is, but that's the core story tenet.
But that is also the first, that is part of thematically one of the things they're doing there, I think is, and I'm only a few hours in Act 2, so I don't know exactly where they're going with the Keanu Reeves stuff, but the idea that you are a nobody, you're a nobody trying to make it all through Act 1. And then Keanu Reeves' character, Johnny Silverhand, is one of the most famous people in the entire world in Cyberpunk. He is like
a celebrity.
He's a massive super celebrity who is also a terrorist. In his off hour. Like that is who he was in the old game. Like that is who Johnny Silverhand is. So you have paired up basically one of the most important people on the planet with this nobody that you're playing.
Yep.
And so the dichotomy between those two things is potentially interesting. And the idea that this hasn't happened yet in the story, but I assume that at some point your character is going to sort of be forcibly educated on the idea that maybe being a big deal in Night City is not all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah.
In more trouble than it's worth, maybe. So I think that's where they're going with that. And I think the groundwork of especially if you do more open world stuff, because obviously I did a lot more kind of wandering around. I wandered the city a lot. I just walked around.
Matt, the first time I walked onto the street in this game, my jaw dropped.
This is the best city environment in a video game ever. I will say.
Literally my jaw dropped. And it takes a while before you just get dropped onto the street when you can do whatever you want. And it happened, and I was like, holy crap. This is
and it's funny because so you're the first thing after because basically you do a thing, the tutorial stuff, you go back to your apartment and you're supposed to sleep and you get up and then after you get up, you can kind of go wherever you want. Yep. And until you don't have your car back yet, but you can kind of walk around. And it's funny because the first thing you're supposed to do is meet Jackie. And I accidentally walked near him, walking around the area of the city. And I hear him goes hey, there she is. Is it? All right, I'll see you later. And I'm like, I'm not talking to you yet. I'm not doing that. And man, this city feels like a real city in the way that nothing else I've ever played has. Like you can walk up alleys and they twist around into a staircase and twist around into an overpass and suddenly you're on this side of the road. And it
reminds me of Tokyo, the city does, because everything's piled on top. It's not that big. Like you look at the map isn't that big. The actual territory isn't that big.
Not true. The map is 12 times as big as The Witcher 3.
It is.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's huge.
That's surprising to me.
The whole map with the Outlands included is something like 5 times GTA 5.
I have not gone out to the Outlands all that much. I have, however, tried to leave the city. And there's invisible walls there. They won't let you leave.
There are barricades in places. Yeah. That stuff doesn't open up until
I've tried to go to the ends of the city, and I guess what I would say more accurately is Night City is not that big.
Night City is huge, actually.
Really?
Because that's the thing.
I can drive from one end to the other in 2 minutes.
You can't. You're only in one district. What I'm saying is, because that's what I'm saying is like Act 1 is limited to basically that one Watson area.
Yeah.
Because as you finish the opening tutorial stuff, you get the warning that they're closing off the area. You have to get in before they close things off. That close off doesn't stop until Act 2.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I get that
Act
there's
2,
stuff
you can go
outside the
around.
city, but like if you drive to the edge of the city, you can see it's just desert. Like there's nothing there. The city stops. So
Yeah, well, the city is about, I think, half the map. And then the Outland is like surrounding around in like a big. I mean, there's not a lot of stuff as far as I can tell to do in Outland. Badlands, is it what do they call it? I don't remember what the name of it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you drive through it in the Nomad Origin. It's basically farms. You know, it's
there's not a
farms
lot there.
and
It's just
ruins.
desert with cacti and
there's some like one area of it is like more farm stuff that like is more green and more functional. Some of it's just like Mad Max desert stuff. Like it depends where you are. So there's differences. But it's huge. The map is huge from what the stuff.
Well,
I was
I'm glad to
reading
hear that
said.
because you get these missions and it's like, okay, go over here. It literally takes you like a minute to get to each destination. And then sometimes like you'll get a waypoint and it'll say 250 meters away, but you have to go like all
you
the
gotta
way
go up
around
here
in
and
a
over
loop
this
just to
and
get back to that spot. Like,
unless you don't want to like risk your life by running across a freeway
right.
or something. You know,
but
like,
that's kind of how the city is designed. You can't just go straight to anything. Like you get a waypoint, you're like, that's not very far away. It'll end up taking you a lot longer to get there than you think it will.
And because of that, it feels like a real city.
It
like,
does.
Especially
that happens
like,
when you're
like
walking around a
Tokyo.
real city. Absolutely.
Yeah, and like, although most real cities I've walked around do not have quite so many studded dildos laying around, I have to say.
Just lay it on the ground.
That
To
you
your
can
point,
then sell to an ATM.
now you said that you think it's what was your word? The best or the most realistic city in a game?
I think it is the most convincing urban environment I've ever seen in a game. In terms of feeling like a real place, real place that could have grown up around itself. And not just like a backdrop. Like my comparison, I guess, would be just in recent times would be London in Watch Dogs Legion. Yeah. Watch Dogs Legion's London looks great, and it looks like London, but it's a backdrop. Yeah. It is not a place I would wander around and poke around in very much. It's a place where the other interesting stuff happens. To me, even still probably 20 hours into this game, I will still just walk around this city and see what I see.
Because there's just crazy crap going on all over the place. To your point, I would agree for the most part. The little things about it that I think lend to what you were saying is just walking down an alley and just finding some like two people like laying on the concrete talking to each other, and one of them's like on drugs and trying to stand up and like holding onto the wall. Like this crap, I've seen sexual assaults. Like I've seen crazy crap happening in the alleyways, and things
like just like walking by like a police scene and like you see them like doing the holographic scene reconstruction of whatever crime happened there. At one point I was walking down and like just the weird people you see, and like here's one thing I really love is how many people move at different speeds.
Yeah, they're not all the same.
Some people are in a hurry.
That's
some people are just
funny
walking. Some people are
kind
of like walking. And you can see people like kind of holding, like their bionic arm doesn't work right, so they're holding it because it hurts. At one point I saw someone run by me, and they had like deer legs. They had like these cybernetic legs that just ended in like points.
Hooves.
Like they weren't even like feet. They had no feet. Wow. They just had like kind of like little hoof things at the butt, and they just sort of like bounded past me. Like what the? It felt like if you transported me to that city, I would have had to like stand out there on that sidewalk and go crazy for a while before I adjusted to it. You know,
they have fully realized Night City.
Yeah,
I'll agree.
Impressive.
It is very convincing. The tone is consistent across the board. Every character you run into fits. Every gadget you see fits. Every vehicle fits. Every building fits. I love that you can watch, like, you walk through places and see the neighborhoods change. Yeah.
And like scan people and be like, oh, this is the Russian area, and now I've moved more into a place where like the Chinese immigrants live because the names have changed and the characters are more and the food stalls are Asian food now instead. Like, it's the detail and kind of the it feels like a real place. Like,
now the one thing I would say is most of it isn't interactive. And
there's not a lot to do.
That has been my big disappointment with this game's world. This is why when we started when you were like, it's the most well-realized urban environment. That's why I was asking for the exact word that you used, because it's not the most interactive urban environment that we've ever seen in a game. There's not a lot of like little like mini games and fun stuff to do like you get in like the Yakuza games. If you try to go into most buildings, you can't go in them. They're just fake doors. It looks very busy and bustling, and it is, but it's all on the outside of the buildings for the most part.
Yeah, but that's video games. So
yeah,
like,
I wouldn't say that in 2020. That's video games.
I would. I mean, I can't think of another game.
The Division 2. You can go in and out everywhere. The whole world is there to just go in and out.
Okay, but that helps that there's nobody on the street for that.
Yeah.
I don't think of the Division or Division 2 as very compelling city environments. They're just burned out, abandoned places. Like, there's not a lot going on in terms of like kind of, you can't do mini games, but it's like, I think I believe it as a place.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. Agreed. 1,000,000%.
Like, it doesn't make it a fun gameplay situation, but I like walking through it and looking at things.
Agreed. It's like going to Tokyo for the first time, and you finally get into the city, and you're like, oh my God.
There is, crazy. I think, what you did say about 2020, I think does point to what, and maybe we'll get into it later. This is not a next-gen game.
No.
And not in the same way that people go, it doesn't have the next-gen patch for the ray traces.
Right.
No,
that's not what we're talking about.
When you play this game, it's not a next-gen game.
Yeah.
It is probably what Fallout 4 should have been.
I call it Grand Theft Cyberpunk, Matt. There are so many elements of this game.
I would not insult it like that.
What'd you say?
I would not insult it that much.
Really?
Because I think GTA 5 is a fairly sterile game in terms of being an open world.
Well, let me explain my comparison. But the comparison
is there.
The driving
is there.
Grand Theft Auto, and I hate it. Like, I get used to it in Grand Theft Auto, but this game, for whatever reason, decided to take the same model, so it takes a while to learn how to, like, break around turns and stuff like that. But what bothers me the most is when you get in a car, it does that goofy camera angle where it shows the front of the car first, so you take off, and then the camera's slowly swinging. Like, I hate that. I have no idea why Grand Theft Auto does it. I have no idea why they copied it here.
It drives
me bonkers.
I'm not sure what you mean.
I drive cars from third person. I don't drive in first person. So
I am driving this in third person. Okay. I don't find the first person view in this very useful.
For driving is hard because it obscures too much of the vision in first person.
You have no situational awareness.
Yep. You can't see what's going on in the periphery.
Yeah, I do some stuff first person. I can drive like Forza in cockpit mode, but like this doesn't. It's too narrow. Even when messing with the field of view, I couldn't feel comfortable in the first person.
So I drive cars in third person. So when I get in a car, you get into the car, and then the camera cuts to the front of the car. And then you're sitting there, and the camera will slowly start going behind it, but I don't want to wait, so I just start driving. And while you're driving, the camera is trying to, like, get back behind the car. You end up, like, running into something. Like, it's the same thing.
I've never had that happen.
That happens to me in Grand Theft Auto. It happens to me here
I guess sometimes in GTA because you're third person, but, like, in this game, when I get in the car, the camera just pulls back to the back to look at the back of the car, and that's it.
That doesn't happen for me at all. You think that's a bug? Maybe.
Might be. I mean,
who knows?
There's no. I've seen bugs in this thing that I'm just like, are you right?
Are you serious? Yeah, I know, dude. Me too. We'll get to that. We have a whole section of this discussion just on the bugs. We'll get to it.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, so yeah, that could be a whole weird thing that's only happening to you because that seems. I've talked to other people that are playing the game, and like everyone has their own fleet of weird stuff that happens to them regularly.
I mean, you'll see it in the B-roll because every time I get in a car, it happens. So I have tons of B-roll of it. So you'll be able to check it out if you're watching the show.
Yeah, mine is like I get in and it just sort of the camera just sort of pulls it through the back window and shows the
that
back
never happens for me ever.
And, but I mean, it's rough. Like it doesn't look good when it does it. You're literally pushing the camera through the character model and through the car model. It's not an elegant transition by any means. Yeah.
Well, I would say this: very few things in this game are elegant. In its current
outside
state.
of the art direction,
like in its current state, it'll get there, I think. But right now, so as we were talking earlier, Act 2 is really where the story kicks off. That's where you get the whole. I have X amount of time to complete a big objective. Again, I'm not going to
which I don't like. I might add.
You don't like it?
I don't like having a timer put on the main quest.
I know you definitely won't like it, Matt, because you love to poke around and find stuff. And for me, I'm like, whatever. I'm going to plow through the main quest anyway.
No,
so
same thing happened. I mean, obviously happened when I played Immortals. Happens when I play. As soon as you let me go, what's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to go places I'm not supposed to go.
Right.
Like I'm going to start wandering around. The first thing I did was wander around. Then when I got the car. As soon as I got Jackie out of it, I was like, okay, I'm going to go see if I can drive out of the area. And I couldn't because the court, the police still have the whole place blocked off. It's my thing in open world games is like, I want to see where I can go where I'm not supposed to be.
Yep.
And
I just plow through the game. And that's why we're perfect to discuss games together, because we approach games, especially open world games, completely differently.
When I finally jumped in and like did the story stuff to finish Act 1, like Watson was empty of side content, more or less. Like I'd done everything that I get, because some stuff's too high level for me. Some stuff was still marked as like danger level very high, and I didn't mess with that, because if you're out of your level element in this game, you will get two-shotted basically.
Yep.
But I did almost everything, and as a result, I had a lot of gear. I had a lot of cool cybernetics. Like the story stuff was super easy because I was not because I was high level, but because I was really kitted out.
And
so
that makes a big difference, and we'll get to that stuff too. The unlocks and the perks and the abilities and all that stuff, they dive real deep, and we'll definitely dive deep into that stuff as well. But what I was getting at is, at that turning point of the story, you do have a real goal, and that's when the story became more interesting for me. I would also say that no one is sacred in this game. No one is safe. Anyone can die. So just go into the game knowing that and set your expectations accordingly. They are not shy about killing off characters that at least I thought were probably going to be there until the end of the game. Once I met them and I was like, oh, I see how we're working together, or we're doing this or that. Like, this is probably going to be something that's going to build the whole length of the game. Nope. Like, they'll yank the carpet out from underneath you in this story, and I think that's probably all I want to say about it. I think we've probably said enough.
I'm also pretty pleased that, like, because sometimes in games you can tell who's going to last and who won't by like, the effort put into their design or their character model. Not true here.
No, everything's equal footing here. Every character's handled very well, I think. Not just with their costuming and things like that, their voice acting, their writing, everything.
Yeah, voice acting is very good.
Except for, I would argue, Keanu Reeves. I think he's the worst voice in this whole game.
The problem with Keanu is like, and I as I've gone further into Act 2, I feel like it's getting a little better.
I just felt like I was starting to become numb to it, to be honest.
Because part of the problem, I think, that I was early on, because like when you first run into him, he's very angry.
Yeah.
He's very angry and he's acting like an asshole. And Keanu isn't good at that.
He's really not. Yeah,
because
he's
Keanu
a nice
is
guy.
Not an angry asshole. He's just
guy.
bad at acting like a jerk.
Yeah.
And it sounds a little artificial when he's being a jerk.
He just sounds like, and I think it's just him. He just sounds like a burnout. Like how he sounds in Bill and Ted is just kind of who he is. Like, and for this character, it just didn't work for me. Like, I don't know. I hate to say it because he's like the poster boy for the game, but
he absolutely looks the part.
Yeah,
like he's a perfect,
for sure,
visual casting. But this is, and look, I don't have a lot of preconceived notions about who Johnny Silverhand is as a character. Yeah. Just because I never got that far into that much into the pen and paper game. But like, if that's your concept of who Johnny Silverhand is, Keanu's a strange pick.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like this hyper smart, conniving terrorist / rock star, but he's just like, dude. Like, I don't know. It doesn't seem to fit the character, but it's not so bad that it's.
Like, it feels like they want that character to be like a laser.
Yeah.
Like,
but he's a baseball bat.
Yeah, and like, and Keanu's trying to play him that way, but it just isn't working. And like, look, part of it might just be like, voice acting's hard.
It is hard. Yeah.
And someone who's, if you're an actor,
try to read something and record yourself sometime.
You might think you can do it, and it's just not quite there. And it's people train for years and years. I have a friend who's a professional voice actor. He started when he was like in his mid 30s, but he took classes for 4 years before he got a professional gig. Like, it's a real thing.
But all the other voice acting, amazing. All the other writing, amazing. Like the music, freaking mind-blowingly amazing.
Vic, the Ripper doc you go to, he's like the main guy you go to for your cybernetics. That's one of the best performances of the year. Yeah. His voice acting, I think.
But you know what, though? Some of the scenes with him and Keanu, because of Keanu, the scenes are a little weird. Like, you can tell that the stuff was recorded separately and that they weren't talking to each other when they recorded it. Maybe that's...
And that they probably couldn't get Keanu to come in for tracks.
Yeah. Because
like you got to kind of work
he's
around that
huge,
initial
and you were lucky to
performance.
get him in the first place, even for a game this big. That's a huge get. And
But your character is also very good. Like I've only played the female version of V.
I'm playing the male, and he is freaking amazing.
The woman, the voice actress is very good too. Like it's look, it's coming off of The Witcher 3. It's not a super surprise that CD Projekt has good English voice acting.
Yep.
I mean, I don't dislike Keanu's performance, but it's not on the level of
stands
somebody.
out.
I mean, Jackie is a fucking great character. Like Jackie sells himself inside of the first 3 lines.
Dude, I fell in love with him within like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
Literally, I was like, I love you. I hope we're gonna be best bros forever. Like,
yep.
They
and
did.
So you are. Like it's like you buy him as your best friend in this world. And
immediately,
and as a valuable person, because life and humanity is kind of cheap in this cyberpunk world, and the idea that you have this genuine best friend is great. Like, and it works. Like that whole situation, all of Act 1 rides on the relationship between V and Jackie, and the actor playing Jackie makes it happen.
Yeah.
It's really well done.
And he's also kind of a softer character amid this very hard world.
Yeah.
He talks all the time about his mom and his wife, and he's always like, I need to check in with the wife and let her know what's going on. Like,
especially because he's such a huge, he's a giant dude, like big, tough, muscle guy. And like, there's even a scene where, you run into a guy who's bigger than him, and he's like, "Oh, you work out, bro?" Like, what do you do? You doing it? And the guy's just like, "Mm-mm." He's just like, okay.
Yeah, the writing and the voice act is great, and eventually the story also becomes great. It takes a while, and I'll be honest with you, for the first few hours of this game, I'm like, "Oh my god, there is no story. Is this it? Am I just going to run around and just like commit crimes and collect money for 50 hours?"
No, I've seen enough noir that I knew pretty much what they were doing there.
Yeah. Well, they do get to it, and eventually the story is really good, and it is riveting, and you do care, and you care about the other people, not just V. And despite the fact that most of these people are terrible people. People.
The other thing I would say is neat and refreshing is that your character V is like not like just sort of a stoic badass. Like V gets scared of things. V knows that they live in a horrible, vicious city, a horrible world. Like and like when things start to go weird or bad, like V gets nervous. Like and you can see that like you are still supposed to be sort of only like half a year into your new world as a roving netrunner criminal person, and like a lot of the shit you end up in as you're trying to make it big. And this is true of any career, really. Like when you start to make it big, everything starts to feel a little overwhelming. And V reflects that a lot of the time in the dialogue. And I thought it was really well done.
Yep. And then
you could easily have just done this as sort of like a straightforward, like GTA hero, sort of like, rah, who cares kind of thing. Or even worse, as a silent protagonist, but they did not do that. And V works as a person, I think.
Well, no, another thing that reminds me of GTA is how you get your missions. Because it's like you just go someplace, you watch a little cutscene with a dialogue, then you go off and get your mission. There's a lot of stuff in this that made me think that CD Projekt Red took a good bit of inspiration from GTA for this game, whereas in the past, they kind of just did their own thing and was like, let other people copy us. I got a lot of GTA vibes in this game.
There's some GTA influence right down to like where you're doing something else, sometimes even main story related, and you're like, can you people stop calling me?
Yeah,
like,
or just like the people around you, shut up. Like there's times I'm trying to hear like important dialogue, and there's so many people standing around me just saying random crap. I can't hear what I need to like hear.
Yeah, the sound mix is a little muddy in places. The other thing is like it's because like the sound mix is quieter, feels quieter on the Xbox to me, and so I turned it up more to be able to hear more about what's being said in places. But sometimes like I'll run into a pedestrian and I'll either talk to them or I'll accidentally try to pick something up and talk to them by accident. Mm-hmm. And last night I ran into there's a guy who's leaning against a railing in the first area you come out of your apartment to. And the last time I talked to him, he said something funny. So I went to talk to him again on the second playthrough on Xbox, and I talked to him, and for whatever reason, his voice line was like 9 times louder than the rest of the game.
Have you noticed? We have a bug section later, but have you noticed that like you'll just start moving really fast out of nowhere?
Yes.
Like I'll be I'll be doing like a walk and talk where they force you to walk really slow, and you're just like following the character talk, and all of a sudden you'll go.
I think that's like, yeah. that happens
There's
because
so much
that happens
random
because you
stuff like that.
That's not random. That happens because you step over an object and the game is trying to kind of re-glue you to the floor, and it pushes you forward to like get you to a flat surface. There's videos online of that happening, like
where you can see it, like the full body or whatever.
People doing it during a gunfight, and they jump over like the wrong bag or something, and they get thrown like a mile that way. Like they fly.
I mean, I've seen crazy. Again, we'll talk about bugs later. I've seen crazy crap in this game.
They have this thing came in real hot.
It did. Yeah.
Like it probably should not have come out this year. We'll get to that.
Trying to wrap up the audio. The music in this game is freaking amazing. Matt,
phenomenal.
I'm curious to hear your impressions of the music.
I love it.
You love it?
Yeah. Like I mean, I'm not super in all the hip hop stuff, but I like synthwave and sort of the old kind of like that kind of like the cyberpunky, whatever you want to call those genres.
It's techno. That this whole soundtrack is freaking techno. And techno is this electronic genre that when it all started and blew up, everything was techno. Like my mom calls everything techno. She doesn't know what house or trance or drum and bass is. Any electronic music to her is techno, and that's the way it started. But techno actually is a very specific electronic music genre that's known to be a little more robotic, maybe a little more abrasive, a little more machine-like.
I think most people use techno interchangeably with EDM.
Exactly, and it's not. Techno is a very specific subgenre inside electronic music, and that's what this soundtrack is. So if you listen to the soundtrack of this and you like it, you like techno. And the techno that they have in this game is freaking amazing. It is so good. I would argue more than anything else in this game, it sets the tone for the game. It's very alien and strange, but still melodic and still kind of soothing at the same time. Like, it's just really good. And this
there
is
have been
coming
times
from,
when I've driven places, and when I've gotten to where I was going, I stayed in the car to finish the song,
to the music,
which I never do in open world
so
games.
Good. And this isn't even like the licensed stuff that they got from like Grimes and the other artists that they worked with. This is just the OST. I'm going to buy the OST, and I never do that. So we hardly ever talk about music in games in GameFace. It's so good, I wanted to bring it up today when we discussed it. So
I bought an OST this week. You saw it on Twitter, some people, I think.
I didn't. Which one?
I bought the new, they did a new like symphonic and like remastered OST for ActRaiser.
Oh, that's good. That's a good sound.
In France, and so it's a CD and a vinyl, and I got the full set, and I actually got in early enough that I get a signed little thing from the composer.
Have him sign your vinyl.
So it's a little like statue thing or something that he signed. But I'm in.
Yeah, done. That's awesome.
But yeah, just like this, like I thought the same thing when I was playing this. I'm like, am I going to buy 2 game soundtracks in the same week? Like, that's a landmark experience right there.
It's really good. The music in this is really good. All right, let's start talking about the design of the game. This is an open world action RPG with all these systems that are going on under the hood, and they're all talking to each other. Let's talk about character creation first. Pretty limited, I would say, Matt.
Yeah, shocking.
I actually ended up with women's fingernails because, like, the art that they use to show you the different, you can't tell. So after I created my character, zoom. I see the hands, and he's got fingernails that are like this long, and I'm like, really? And there's no way to go back. There's no way to go back and change the character once you create him. So make sure you've sealed the deal the way you want to before you start the game with that created character.
I was a little surprised that in a game where you can install new skeletons, you can't change your hairstyle. Like that's a little weird.
Or your nails. Right? So it's just this, every time I see my hands, it's just bizarre. I look like Dracula or something. But the character creation is very limited. I was shocked by how limited it was.
You have a lot
honest.
of options in certain parts, body parts, but like I was shocked there's no sliders.
Yep.
Like to fine tune anything. Like that
it's
seems
just
like
options.
Basic.
And for most things, like there's like 12 noses, and there are like 10 ears, and there are like 15 eyes to choose from. There are options, but not a ton.
And 2 penises, which I have never had to do in a game before.
I almost completely skipped over that. Yes, so you set the anatomy of your character, male or female, and if you choose a male, you can either look like Ken, or you can have Are there 3 penis sizes or 2?
There's 2.
There's 2.
There's 3 penis sizes and 2 penises. You can have circumcised or uncircumcised.
Right.
And you got big, default, or large, or big, default, or small.
Yeah.
And the trick is if you pick big, sometimes it will clip through your pants.
And your wang is just showing in the cutscenes. Yeah. That I chose just the normal size or whatever. And nothing like that has happened with that, but I have noticed that like my wang disappears.
So I'm playing as women, and women with vaginas. You only get one vagina option. You get several pubic hair choices. One of mine characters is green, one of them is pink.
Yeah.
And not that it matters. But like so one of the things on that is every time I change clothes in the menu, it flashes. My character flashes me before she gets the new clothing on, so that's great. And periodically in cutscenes, on the Xbox, her pants will disappear.
She's just, and the vagina's there?
Just has no pants on at all, completely naked from the waist down. And then when the cutscene ends, she has her pants back.
Now, my character's wang just
there,
disappears. Like I'll be up in the morning, like looking in the mirror, and it'll just be Ken down there. It'll just be gone. Can I also say how much I appreciate their mirror solution in this game? Oh, yeah.
Where because one of the most expensive in terms of hardware things you can do in a game is do mirror reflections. So the way they deal with that in this game is mirrors are fogged over unless you like lean into them and look in them and activate them.
Well, then you push a button and it's just a video feed.
And it's just a footage of you like looking in them, and you can pick a bunch of facial expressions, none of which really look very different from one another. And then you can stop looking in the mirror.
Yeah. It's like your narcissist meter, I think, that whole interface there. Let's start
I
talking
thought
about
that was
some
very
of the
funny. Like
stuff.
you've got a lot of cool visual tricks going on, but there's like, oh, we can't reflect all this shit in a mirror. What are we gonna do?
Let's start talking about more of the design because we still have a lot to get through. There are multiple difficulty settings, a lot of them. The game defaults to hard when you start it. Did you play it on hard?
I'm on normal.
Yeah, I took it down a notch to normal, which is weird. I usually leave it on the default. I do kind of regret it.
I don't think it's default because when I think it's wherever the cursor is. Because when I started the PS5 version, hard was highlighted because that's where my cursor was. When I started the Xbox version, normal was highlighted.
Well, I did end up choosing normal, and it does have an impact on the game because the second playthrough that I played, I went back and I did leave it on hard for that other one. And even in the limited amount of time that I played that other game save, I could see the difference in the enemies.
It's substantial.
The enemies are kind of bullet sponges in this game, in general.
Early on, for sure. Like I've gotten to the point where I've specialized in my my handguns that like very few guys can take more than 2 headshots from my pistol.
You definitely feel the difference, man, when you upgrade stuff. Like you see it and you feel it. I'm concentrating on rifles. So am I. So like machine guns and stuff like that. I can
rifles are my go-to weapon. Although I am slow in the background, I am upgrading my blade stuff because the katana is probably the best weapon in the game if you can find a good katana, and if you can kind of kit yourself out to be durable enough to close the distance. Like you can kill guys. You can kill like the big cyborg guys in like 2 hits when you've got like the right perks in place.
You feel it. Like your upgrades.
There's very few upgrades in this game that you don't feel like make a difference. Like you even just like little things like the one that gives you like added percentage for crits if you're firing a rifle from behind cover. Like that changes everything.
Well, then all of a sudden you use it and you're like, oh wow, look at my crits firing off. Yeah.
Look at this guy who I would have had to stand and like empty 3 clips into. He just died in 2 headshots. Yeah. You know, it matters, and that's great. Like,
it is great. The enemy AI is really bad. They'll basically just like
unbelievably stupid. And frustrating.
They're just basically making it.
Poke your fucking head out. Just stand up. I'm gonna kill you anyway.
They're just trying to make it hard to hit the enemies, but the enemies actually aren't smart. They're not thinking. They're not working together. They're not flanking. No. They're not communicating with each other. They're just. I don't even know what AI routine they're on.
Last night, because you can run into these, they're like marked with like police stars. They're basically like shootouts that are happening between the police and gangs, and you can help. If you kill the gangs, you'll get a reward from the police. Last night, I found one and I went in to help, and I killed one guy, one gang member from behind, and then the other, there's like 3 cops and 3 gang, like Maelstrom gang guys, and they're all kind of like fighting over this one like little planter box in the middle of this like patio, and one of the cops just threw a grenade in the middle of the planter box and it blew up and killed all of them. And so I'm like, oh, okay.
Stuff
so
like that happens in this game.
Yeah, so I just went and picked up everybody's ammo and sold all their guns, and that was. I mean, I came out of it okay, but it's just like stuff like that happens all the time. You know, that's sort of what I'm partly what I mean by when I said that like this is not a next gen game, is that stuff is amusing and it's fun to watch, but it's stuff we've been amused by since GTA 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And so as far as upgrades are concerned, you're constantly getting new, and I will say that the gear churn in this is way too much. It totally brings me back to like Destiny, where you have like 8 of the same gun and each one's like a sliver of a percentage more powerful. That's what happens in this game. But
I had to establish a rule where like if it's not more than 10 points higher than what I already have, I'm just going to ignore it.
Just ignore it. Yeah, and you can sell all your junk very easily if you want to.
Sell it or break it down for crafting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's much easier to navigate than like Assassin's Creed Odyssey's inventory.
I would agree with that. Yeah,
but like it's
not as good as Valhalla's.
No, right. It's Valhalla is kind of an elegant solution to that idea, where it's like you get one of this type of axe, and then you can just sort of like upgrade it as you see fit, and that's where the resource churn goes in. And the funny thing is, they actually have that in this game.
You can craft and improve your weapons, but they ask for so many freaking resources.
Yeah,
I have never done it. I have not crafted anything because I'm like, bro, I'm not going to give you all that for a freaking silencer. No.
Well, and also like that's like there's. They literally have the Valhalla system in the sense that there are what's called iconic weapons in the game, and they're designed, they're named, and like they're substantially noticeably better than kind of comparable weapons of the same type.
Well, their power level's higher.
Yeah, and you're supposed to be able to upgrade them with crafting to keep them relevant through the whole length of the game. The trouble is, like, I can't remotely afford, even after this much time, to upgrade
I'm way too
any
afraid that I'm going to need it for something else. And I'm like, my gun's already working fine. Like, I'm not going to spend them on this. I'm going to need to bribe somebody later on or craft something else that's more important. So
the one thing I have noticed is that, like, early on, I felt like I was kind of really like, seesawing my way through combat. But once I got kind of the perks and levels in place, like that I wanted, I started developing towards the rifle perks and sort of into the specialization I wanted. Like, it's really easy. Like, it's very hard to run into something that I'm not going to kill in like the one of the big act one kind of finish mission where if you screw up, you can be up against a lot of guys at once. And I thought I was going to instantly die, and I killed like 12 dudes.
Well, I just intentionally went in guns blazing because of what you said. I know I'm not going to die. The health is so plentiful in this game. And
I think I have like 130 of the health inhalers
it's like
at this point.
Like if you just pay attention, you will never die. If you're just looking at your health, you're like, oh, I'm half full, and use health, you'll never die. The only time you're going to die is when you just stop paying attention to it and get caught up in a firefight.
And as a result, I would actually suggest playing on hard.
Yeah, I do regret now playing it on normal because you're right, it has become easier as it's gone on. Like, the enemies aren't scaling in tune with the abilities that I'm getting, the weapons that I'm getting. You're right. As time has gone on, it's become easier and easier to win each skirmish. And that doesn't motivate you to keep playing. But the good news is it's inversely proportional to the story. The story starts out slow, and then it ramps up as the actual challenge of the game is starting to go down. The other thing I would say, too, that we should have mentioned when we were talking about conversations is the branching story paths matter. So there's one mission, and it's a primary campaign mission, where you come back and you've discovered a bunch of stuff on this mission that, like, basically some betrayal, and the character who you did the mission for is like, hey, did you come across anything else on your mission that you're not bringing up? Basically hinting like, hey, this person's going to betray me. Are you going to tell me about it or not? And I decided to tell them that this person was trying to betray them, and I ended up getting more money for the job, like an extra 10% cut of the job. So the decisions that you make, now I don't know is if some of the decisions I made, it's hard to talk about this without spoiling anything, ended up affecting something that happened to that character later on. I'm not sure if that's the case or not. I have not played enough to know how big the ramifications are of the decisions you make in the dialogue trees, but I do know specifically that I got extra rewards because of choices that I had made in the dialogue trees. So there is at least some impact on the game, what you say in your conversations. And we already talked about, the systems are working well. They worked well together. There's basically two main things that you upgrade: your abilities and your perks. Your abilities are the big categories, and then within each one of those are separate things that you can upgrade, and those are your perks, and you get separate points for that. And it does start to get a little confusing because, as you said earlier, Matt, you have like your street cred rating, which is different from your level, and the perks are different from the it does start
street cred more unlocks the ability to use or buy certain items and to get certain side gigs.
Yep. It gets confusing.
Which is good. I mean, you get it eventually, but early on, they're throwing a lot of bars and numbers at you, and
they
you're
don't explain much. And what they do explain isn't explained very well.
There was one thing. So here's a question I have. So early on, like because at the very beginning of the game, when you first go back to your apartment and go to bed, T-Bug, your kind of your operator, says, "Oh, there's over at the hack shop. I set it up so they're going to give you a thing for free. Go over there and get it when you can." And it's the game says like this is important to your hacking skills, so go do this when you get a chance. So the next morning, when I could finally leave the building I was in, I was like, okay, I'm going to go do that before I go talk to Jackie, which is how I started wandering around the city the first time. And on the way to that, I passed by this one area, and a little tooltip popped up that was like, there are hidden goodie like treasure things in places that aren't on the map, so you got to keep an eye out for these things. And I was like, what? Okay. And I looked around and I was like, okay, where is that? Oh my God, what am I looking for? Is there a sound? There's no sound and no indicator. And I wandered around until I found it was basically like a dead net runner who had like a really good cyberware upgrade on her, and that I can't even use until I'm like way further in the game.
Level. Yeah.
But I found it. I'm like, oh, cool. Like that's a cool thing. Like that's nice. I mean, there's no real. It basically is encouraging to explore. When I played the Xbox version, that tooltip never popped up. Like I never got an indicator near in that same area. I did not get that tooltip.
It could just be another bug, Matt.
It could be, but I'm like, so is it just telling me? Because I was confused by that. Because I'm like, do you mean like there are specific locations I'm supposed to look for, like caches of cool loot, or are you just telling me kind of generally keep an eye out for?
I didn't see that at all. I never got that tooltip.
And like that's the kind of thing that early on in this game I felt like a lot of stuff felt a little more vague.
It is. This game is vague. Like how things work. Like I've had to go into menus and look at like the control scheme a couple different times to remember how to do certain things. It's a lot, and it's not explained especially well.
I had to go into the controller layout picture to figure out how to put my gun away.
Yeah, for stuff like that, absolutely. Yep, and I've been doing the same thing, so you're not alone there. But I will say this, the leveling does feel meaningful. You can feel a difference. Yeah. The balance just isn't there. The enemies do not level. And I don't know if maybe on a different difficulty setting they've done a better job of this, but at least on the default difficulty setting, normal, they do not keep up with you as you level up. And it does become quite easy after a while. Brain dance. Biggest disappointment for me in this game is the brain dance. It's like playing like an Arkham game. It's like detective mode from a Batman game. It's fine.
It's got more to it, but it's still the same still the same idea.
It's fine. And for, the first few times I did it, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And you have like this little like spider bot that you can control, and there's puzzles that they work into it. And you're right, it's more robust than what we've seen in like Batman games for the most part, but I still got tired of it after a while. It's still really just like scanning the whole room until you get the ping, and then you scan it, and then you scan the next ping, and stuff just kind of happens.
It's a little too guided.
Yeah,
would be kind of my criticism of it. Like if you wanted me to sort of scrub through the thing and find, you can highlight stuff, because part of the trick of the brain dance thing is you can only really look at things that the person whose brain has been scanned can see.
Yeah.
So like it would be maybe more interesting but on the timeline, if there's a clue, like it pops up a little like highlighted rectangle thing that says like, here's where the clue is. It's like, it feels a little by rote.
Yeah. To me, I feel like it was maybe a feature that they're like, this sounds cool. And then they build it and they're like, this isn't very cool, but we can't remove it. So we're
like in testing, like no one understands how this works and they can't find anything. And it's just frustrating. So let's just make it really obvious.
Yeah, so it could be. I'm not a fan of it at all. In fact, I'm going to...
the brain dance is also what's giving people epileptic
That's
seizures.
Which they did not bother to put a warning. What video game doesn't have an epilepsy warning? It's the only one of even indie games have them.
So what this is because this has been going on in the press and Twitter a lot, but like what it is when you do the brain dance, you put on this little like visor thing, and it's got these little rectangular light things on it, and it flashes strobe-like white lights at your character's face to represent being put into the brain dance trance or whatever. But the problem is that can actually trigger epileptic seizures in real people. Yep. And it did, in fact, trigger that in one of the reviewers. She had a grand mal seizure when the brain dance thing hit, and she's still not fully okay. And in response to her criticizing the precious game, people started sending her epileptic trigger videos, and it caused more seizures for her. So she is like, back square one on that, because holy shit, are you not allowed to criticize this game on the internet? And hey, like I haven't finished the game yet, but I read that review, and I don't really disagree.
I can't argue with any of the points that are made in the review. I just think they're going to bother everyone a different amount. So the stuff that it was brought up in that review, I haven't seen anything that I'm like, no, that doesn't happen. Like, it all does. Yeah. But I think a big part of it is you, personally. How much does it bother you, that element of the game? How much does that element of the game that you really like, how much do you like that? And that ultimately
well, also, like, look, I am still at the point right now where I would call this game good, not great. It is not my game of the year.
Well, I'm not ready to say any of that yet. I have not finished it. I am going to finish it here in the next couple days before we have our Game of the Year discussion on Tuesday.
And I'll see where it goes, but so far, and I don't mean this just in the sense of Act 1 being kind of like a setup act. I'm so far what I see, and like this ties into sort of the trans issues that have been part of it, kind of using them as a sort of a fetish object in the advertising you see around the city and that kind of thing. This feels to some degree, while it does feel like a pretty solid noir story, like kind of tech noir story, cyber noir, you want to call it, kind of like what Blade Runner was. Like Blade Runner was not really cyberpunk so much as a noir story set in a cyberpunk city.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Because cyberpunk didn't really exist as a concept yet.
I mean, Matt, I would argue that this is just another Matrix movie.
Somewhat. I mean, here's the thing.
This could be, like, I keep thinking at the end of the game, they're going to be like, and you just watched The Matrix 5. Like,
well, The Matrix is cyberpunk, so yeah, like that's
but
true.
But even like when you meet Johnny for the first time and you're backstage, there are the Matrix screens on the computer monitors running backstage. Did you notice that?
Well, yeah, everything's got that kind of green rain thing going on. I mean, I'm sure that's an intentional reference.
Yeah,
I'm sure,
of course,
because it's Keanu.
Yeah.
But like what I'm saying is that so far, at least, while the story is an interesting sort of crime story, and like the character examination of Johnny versus V is interesting, in terms of a treatment of actual cyberpunk, it's a pretty surface level thing.
Yeah,
like they don't
That's
have
what
anything.
I was getting at when I was talking about the story. Basically,
it's like they don't have anything to say about what they're doing in the extreme fetishization, not just of trans people, but of like the sexual element of kind of the culture. They haven't gone there. They don't really have anything to say about it. It's just there because either you expect it or it's there to shock you. It's edgy.
Well, I think it's there because they want to be woke. They want their games to be woke. They don't want a bunch of complaints after the game gets out there.
No, they don't.
Really?
That's wrong. The problem is that it's not woke. It's anti-woke. Like, that's the problem. It's like they make...
Well, they don't know how to do woke. That's the problem.
That is part of the problem.
They tried to do woke, and they have no clue how to do it.
Right. They think incorporating it is progressive,
right. They
but
think
really
just putting it in is good enough, and it's not.
But that's not how that works.
Yeah.
And the other thing I will say in terms of the setting, and this is part of my real problem with the game in terms of sort of how they approach the material, this game, and Cyberpunk as an IP, this game does not take place in our future. It does not take place in our timeline, like 2077. Like, the idea is not that if I happen to live to be 101 years old, I am not going to see Night City, because Night City was established in the 90s.
Right.
Like, this is very much a cyberpunk that is rooted in the 1980s when this IP was created. The USSR still exists in 2077. There's still Cold War elements to things. There's still that fear or feeling that like Japan is going to own everything at some point. Like, it feels like an 80s retro throwback idea of cyberpunk and not a relevant to 2020 cyberpunk thing.
Interesting.
Which is both disappointing and kind of expected because you are.
I would also
adapting this
argue that
IP.
you may be one of 1,000 people who may pick up on that.
That's true, but like I'm still sort of kind of holding that line where I'm like, this may be, and maybe that's one of the reasons they called it, just in part because it's IP. But calling it Cyberpunk, just without any other extra, kind of dress up to the title, is kind of because it is literally a throwback to when Cyberpunk emerged as a genre, and it doesn't have much else to say about itself.
The city is a character.
Yeah.
Probably the primary character in the plot.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest.
I mean, the other characters talk about the city more than anyone
talk about
else
other people
in the beginning of the game.
Yep.
Like that, this Night City is brought up as a thing more often than almost any other character in the game.
And it happens a lot in real life. I talk about LA all the time. When I lived in Philadelphia, I was very proud to be from Philly. Like, it's just, they nail that part of it, but the overarching kind of big idea plot, not as good as I had hoped.
Yeah, and it makes me understand why they kept saying this game was not political.
Yeah.
Because it is. I mean, obviously there are politics in anything that are going to deal with corporations and sort of the megacorps treating human life as disposable and money. Obviously, that's all there. Or the advertising and how it treats human sexuality as sort of a cheap leverage thing rather than something to be actually treated with respect. But the thing is, like, yes, it's not really. It doesn't really have anything to say about politics in the 21st century because it's entirely rooted in the politics of the Cold War.
Yeah, it is.
Era, and it hasn't really gone much further than that, which maybe is an interesting commentary on the state of political discourse in Poland, maybe,
or Eastern European game development in general.
I don't know enough about that to make that decision, but like it feels. And I'm, in the same way I say that doesn't feel like a next gen game. It doesn't feel like a next gen story. It feels like a throwback in some ways. I like that in terms of kind of the noir references. Like I dig that. I think that's cool, and I like that noir genre. But at the same time, I wish they'd been a little more ambitious in terms of what they wanted to say, or even having something to say.
They have not. This game has nothing. At least yet has nothing to say.
Doesn't feel like it, no.
I hope I'm proven wrong before it's over.
It feels like you're telling some compelling character stories, but it doesn't feel like it's like you have this whole world, which is basically one giant metaphor, and you're not really doing anything with, and you're not even, the basic part of Cyberpunk is the punk part, not the cyber part. The punk part is more important. You have to be up against these monolithic corporations. And the problem is, at least so far, the game is kind of okay with you siding with them. Yeah,
I do it all the time. There's no detriment to it. There's no deterrent.
Right. So my thing would be like, Cyberpunk 2077 is a real point of view problem. Yeah, because it can't take a point of view without locking you out of your choices. But by giving you so many choices, it can't have an opinion on its own setting. Yep. And I find that very bland in the end.
Yep. Let's talk about gameplay controls. I already talked about the vehicles. They take a while to wrangle. Eventually, you can get good at them. They still feel sluggish. They still feel like they stop really slow. Would you agree with all that?
I feel like they're okay. I don't have a reaction really positive or negative to the vehicles. My issue with the vehicles
is feel like Grand Theft Auto.
Sort of. Like it depends which one you're driving. Like your default car is fine. Like
it turns like a bus.
Turns all right.
I tried to do a 3-point turn in the street, and I had to do like a 6-point turn.
I feel like the car's pretty responsive overall. My problem is I have done some.
Well, you get different cars. Wait,
which
class are you using? Like your starter car's different for each one. Like Street Kid got like a huge like hoopty.
So
the Nomad got like a turbocharged compact.
Yeah, the Nomad and the Corpo have the same car.
Oh, okay.
As far as I can tell, they're the same car, and I find that one responsive and fine. Okay. My issue is it hasn't happened in the main story, but there's been a couple side missions where I had to drive someone somewhere or go play, and they do this thing where they have like planned kind of scripted events happen to sort of slow you down or like add to the story of what happens, and the game tries to sort of automatically stop you or kind of like it sort of takes over the driving a little bit to try to make you like not ram into the truck that's scripted to go in front of you or like that. And it doesn't really work every time. And you don't know it's happening. It's a little subtle. So sometimes you're like, why isn't the fucking car working? And it's a very mushy solution to things.
The gunplay in this game, I'll just say it, is terrible. It's terrible. I don't feel anything fire in these guns. And I'm feeling crap, like the DualSense is shaking in my hand or whatever, but I don't feel it. When you shoot these guns, you do not feel like you're shooting that gun.
That's kind of what I meant when I said that it feels like what Fallout 4 should have been.
Yep.
Because
The shooting in Fallout feels very much the same way. There's no weight to it. There's no impact to it. The sound effects, the hit mark, all of it. It's all missing. It's just you're just shooting into what feels like paper mache enemies.
You know what? The one time I did feel like it had it was there's a sequence where you play a brain dance for someone with a very powerful gun, and that felt like how the whole thing should feel.
You
like
get crazy weapons
You're taking heads off with one shot, and like you saw guys like really falling back when you'd hit them in the
like Johnny's handgun.
Johnny's handgun is what I'm talking about. Yeah,
okay.
Johnny's handgun.
It's a house wrecker, dude.
Yeah, that one's great.
that felt good. That's the only weapon that felt good in the whole game.
The base pistol should feel like that.
Yeah.
And like the bigger one should
Johnny's
be
gun
more.
wouldn't just blow off their heads; it would blow off their neck too. Like
I'm okay with that. Like that.
Yeah, it felt good.
The
rest of it though, crap.
Part of the reason the game feels like it has bullet sponge stuff is because there's no appreciable location damage. Like it doesn't matter where you hit
headshot or nothing.
Headshot.
Yeah.
I mean, headshot matters in terms of the damage you do, but nobody reacts to being shot in the leg. No one reacts to being.
Yeah, they
shot
don't like
in the
grab
shoulder,
their leg and then fall down on one knee. Like there's none of that stuff. Like there's like a ragdoll system, and I've seen crazy crap happen with that.
If you're throwing explosives, you're gonna see some stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing. Throwing grenades in this also feels like crap. You throw the grenade, and the grenade comes out of your hand and jumps up in the air into this like arc. It's the game.
It's like
to
a
me,
weird hand physics thing that doesn't make any sense with the character's hand.
The game to me does not feel good to play at all. The traversal, terrible. Like just climbing over something feels so awkward. Like it's not. It's like it wasn't there, and they added it like last week. And they're like, "Oh, people need to climb over stuff." Well, crap. Like in gunfights, you get caught on stuff all the time. Like what you don't realize is in games like Call of Duty or any of the other big shooters, there's all this stuff on the floor, but that stuff has no hitboxes. Like you can just run over it like it's not there. Now, a chair or a couch, sure. But if you have like a bucket on the floor or a broom laying down on the floor, you shouldn't trip over it. Well, this game has hitboxes for everything. So if you're in a gunfight and you're strafing side to side or you're trying to get some, you'll get caught on something and then it just all falls to crap. They should have hired somebody to handle the gunplay in this game. It is not their wheelhouse. It is not their forte. This, to me, from what I saw at E3, was the most disheartening thing, was feeling the gunplay for the first time with my own hands and feeling how crap it was. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing if you go back and look at what I said after E3 when I was blown away by this game, I probably said, it looks blah, 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 but I'll wait until I put it in my hands. And now that I have it in my hands, to me, the gameplay in this game is below average. Probably the best way I can put it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me that much as you, but it is there. I think part of it is this is one of those games. It's one of those first-person games where you can look down and see your whole body. You know, the body of the character is still in the world, even though you can't see it.
Yep.
Just like Fallout, just like Bethesda's games. And Bethesda, to me, has a lot of the same problems where you step over objects and it kind of messes you up. I mean, Bethesda games tend to handle it by just randomly hurting you.
Yeah.
You know, you've done the thing all the time in Fallout or Skyrim where you step on the wrong thing, it catches you between a geometry object and itself, and it just decides to hurt you for like 1% of your health for no good reason. This thing has the same problem, and I wonder if it's part of rendering the character model all the time, and you can't really. There's no real elegant way to tell the game when I'm doing this in a gunfight.
Ignore it.
You should ignore the bucket. Mm-hmm. But if I'm walking towards the bucket and I'm not in a gunfight, I should be able to kick it. Not that it kills me because the game is really easy.
It's just annoying. Yeah. That's what it is. More than
I don't find the melee combat particularly satisfying either.
No, it feels crappy too. I feel no connection with that.
There's no impact.
Yeah, no impact. That's what I feel about all the combat in this entire game. And I do get it. This is an RPG, and it is more about numbers and crunching and stuff like that. I'm just telling you, if you're somebody like me who really places a lot of emphasis on how a game feels to play, you're going to be disappointed in this game. I don't know what they can do something to fix it, but
it doesn't have to be like that.
It doesn't. Like I said, they should have hired somebody who works on shooters. Like they could have told them. I could have told them, Send me a build. I'll tell you, this gunplay feels like shit.
I'm sure they knew, but making it that and knowing it needs to be that are two different things.
Because there's all these little tricks that developers use to nail that stuff, and they don't have a person to do it yet. But maybe for the sequel, they will. This game has lots of set pieces. I was pleasantly surprised by that. However, they are very bad if you compare them to set pieces in, like, Call of Duty. Like, there's crazy car chases, and, like, there's one thing where, like, a robot is stuck to the hood of the car and you're trying to shoot it off of the hood. And it's fun, but it's all just very janky, and they like it doesn't have like the polish that you would get in like a Sony first party game or a Call of Duty game.
It's particularly in the shooting in the car chase stuff.
Yeah.
I never feel like it's hitting what I'm aiming at.
I don't know if it does. I think once like enough bullets enter that hitbox, the vehicle just explodes. I honestly think that's what happens.
When I'm usually trying to headshot guys, and it feels like I'm like I got the reticle on their head.
There's no point.
I'm like I don't know, man.
I think you can shoot the radiator of the car and be just as successful. Because that's what I started doing. I just started shooting the front of the car, and I was blowing up the car just as quick.
I do that sometimes, and they just sit there. They catch on fire, but they wouldn't blow up, and it just feels like it feels like there's a lot of hit scan tomfoolery happening here.
I agree. I think there's a lot of tomfoolery going on with this game in general. Like, I can see in this game where they did tricks to make stuff work. Whereas in a lot of other big budget AAA games, like, they've just built it so it works. And in here you see kind of like them trying to work around limitations here and there. What else? We're running out of time, but there's so much to talk about with this game. Let's see. No, actually, maybe we got through all of it, other than the bugs. So if you've read a review for this game, you know it's got bug issues. If you played The Witcher 3 when it came out, you know that most of CD Projekt Red's games have bugs. This game definitely has bugs. I've had crazy ones like my penis disappearing, everything from that to like just objects changing from like solid to like this invisible like blue wireframe, stuff just disappearing in general, people disappearing.
Jackie sits on nothing a lot.
Yeah, there was one level I was on where I needed to meet Jackie at an elevator. We get to the elevator, and an enemy was inside the elevator just bouncing up and down like this inside the elevator, and I'm trying to shoot him while he's like bouncing up, like stuff like that. But I have really not come across anything that like wiped a save, or I lost progress, or I lost like a cosmetic or a new weapon. Like, to me, all that stuff has worked fine for me, but there are bugs everywhere. I've had it crash out to the PS5 desktop once.
I've had it crash out to the PS5 desktop at least 9 times.
Jeez.
Happens a lot. And sometimes when I reload it in, my settings are gone. So
I've had that happen.
All that.
Subtitles won't go away.
Subtitles hang. Here's another thing with the subtitles. So I play with subtitles off, as well, you know.
Yep, me too.
But if you turn the subtitles off in this game, there's no subtitles for the foreign language.
Yeah, there's no translation then.
So there's the scene early on, I was like, okay, well, like I guess my character just doesn't understand, other languages. But there's a scene in the story that's all in Japanese, and about halfway through, I'm like, am I supposed to understand what's happening? I
did the same thing, man.
And I turn the subtitles on, and when I turn the subtitles on, suddenly it displays it like in kind of Japanese characters, and then it sort of morphs into English. So clearly you're supposed to be able to understand what these characters are saying. Your software is translating it or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if I don't want to read the English, I don't want to read what the actors are saying before they finish saying it. I don't want subtitles, but I want to understand what Japanese subtitles say. I can't believe there's no option for that. Like, there's no option for foreign language subtitles on it. Like, that's absurd that's not there.
I had the same problem. I had it in my notes here too. But
it's
glad
crazy.
You mentioned it. There are a lot of bugs, and some of them are funny and cool. Some of them are just really annoying or stupid. But I haven't had any game breakers yet.
I've had a couple. They're game breakers you can solve. Like, many times on the PS5, I have been doing a quest, and the quest objective wouldn't update, even though I finished it. Like, I
had that too.
And you reload an autosave, and it fixes it basically. Yeah. Or characters missing, and you're supposed to go talk to them, and they're gone. Yeah. Or or
they won't activate. Yeah. Like, this game really just has the full gamut of bugs that you've come across in your entire life. It has like all of them.
To be clear, both next gen ones they run fine.
Yeah,
like,
it looks great
playable.
on PS5. It's definitely not next gen. It doesn't look like.
Don't worry if you've seen that video of the videos going around on Twitter of like the PS4 vanilla version that looks like something that came out of like a PS2.
Yeah.
Like don't worry, it doesn't look like that on the PS5. Like don't worry about that.
But it does appear that if you have a PS4 base or an Xbox One base,
don't.
you may want to just not even buy it. It looks awful.
And like that's not cool.
It's not.
Like,
I mean, this game was originally built for those platforms.
Right.
It was never going to run on those, Matt. Never going to run on them. It was not going to happen, dude.
No,
it just wasn't.
And
now we're all seeing it.
It looks like watching like where people take like the PC versions of things and turn everything down to like 0 settings.
Yeah. Like the 98 D-Make or whatever. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we've touched on most of the big elements of the game, but now the question remains, the game just came out. Should people buy it, Matt? Is it worth $60? Or when they buy for next gen, it'll be more, but it's $60 right now.
I think it will be eventually, but I don't know. I mean, I obviously it's the hottest game of the year or whatever. So I don't expect people to wait, but I think you'll have a better experience if you wait.
I know you'll have a better experience if you wait. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It is a fact. But I would still say go buy this game. Because, Matt, there's nothing else like it, man. There just isn't. Like, despite all the things that we've talked about, the issues that we've had and the bugs, there's no other open world game like this one. Like, the minute I stepped onto the street, like I said earlier, I knew it was going to be different than any other game. Just seeing everything that was just happening and seeing people turning corners and going down alleyways and just the activity of the city, the setting, hearing the people talk for that first everything about it. I was like, oh, this isn't another Assassin's Creed. This isn't another GTA or another GTA clone. This isn't another It is its own thing. And there are so few of those now. I wholeheartedly recommend buying it at $60.
I would say more if you have one of the new systems.
And more so if you have, definitely. If you have a PS5 or Xbox Series X, no brainer, go buy it. It is a PS4 Pro, buy it. Xbox One X, buy it. Base Xbox One, base PS4, watch some footage on YouTube before you take the plunge. That's exactly what I would suggest. But otherwise, like, it doesn't live up to the hype. I think that's what everyone's question is. If you're asking me, Shane, have you enjoyed playing Cyberpunk as much as you thought you would when you saw that E3 demo way back when? No, definitely not. It is not up to the quality standard that I thought it would be based on that demo. A lot of the one thing I would say is that a lot of the stuff that was in that demo that really impressed me, you get right away. And so when I saw that demo, you're seeing a vertical slice. You don't assume that's it. You assume, I'm just seeing a little slice of this, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. And where there's going to be all this other stuff in addition to it. And really, there wasn't. Like, all the stuff that was in that first demo that rocked my world, like being able to bounce bullets off of objects, you get all that, like, immediately. And you fiddle around with it for a while, and it is cool, and it is really fun. But at least based upon what I've played so far, it doesn't evolve beyond that. Like, they kind of give you all that cool stuff at the beginning, and then it gets more powerful.
You get you get enhanced versions of it, but you've sort of seen the trick.
Yeah,
already.
And the problem for me with, my reaction to when it was first shown and to what I'm playing now is that I did not think it was going to be that one-trick pony. Mm-hmm. I thought that was like, wow, if this is the stuff they came up with for this little piece of the game that they can show me, then my gosh, what are they going to do with a 50, 60-hour opus? And that was sort of the perspective I was coming from. So yes, I am ultimately disappointed in this game from what I saw when I first saw it.
I would say I like it, I don't love it, which is a disappointment.
I do think I do love it.
I'm not done with it, obviously, but part of it is I have played it a little more, I think, and I've played a lot more of the open world stuff. I've wandered around and done it.
Yep.
The open world, the non-story stuff, the open world side gigs, the random the crimes you can break up, the police stuff, that kind of thing. They're all the same. Yeah. Like, you just go in and you kill a bunch of guys and you loot everything and you loot the main container and you get XP for it and it's over. Like there is no variation to any of it. And maybe that changes moving forward. But even
I
the
doubt
scripted stuff where
hate
even
to
the
say
scripted
it.
stuff where the fixers are calling you and telling you what you need to do. Like there's like one where I got where they're like, hey, we would really like. This is something I have a question about. I don't know. The kill when you grab guys, you have like the option of like kill them or take them down non-lethally.
Yep.
And like I had a mission where basically I was rescuing.
They get back up. If that's what
rescuing-
you're getting to.
No,
Okay.
no, because they never have.
They have for me. They have absolutely gotten back up
So
after I incapacitated one.
Well, there's
Yep.
a Buddhist monk I was supposed to rescue, and I was warned that like the Buddhist monk would not want me to kill anyone for his sake. So I'm like, okay,
reasons, yeah.
so I went in and there were like 10 guys or something, and I went in and I specifically, I Assassin's Creeded my best way through. I grabbed every single one of them and knocked them out with the non-lethal takedown and like a taser thing I had. And I got there and he sat there and he was mad at me because I killed people, and it didn't matter. And then another time there was another guy.
In his mind, you still killed him. You didn't incapacitate him.
But like I didn't. They were alive.
I know, that's what I'm saying. But the game just did not register it.
Yeah, and then like another time there was
that may be a bug.
There's another
It
gig where I'm
very well
supposed to
could
chase.
be.
There's another gig where I'm supposed to chase a cyber psycho guy, and they tell me like, oh well, you have to. We want him alive because we want to hack into whatever. So I'm like, okay, and I was avoiding that because I didn't have anything non-lethal at the time, but I accidentally wandered into the mission. And the guy was trying to kill me, so I had to fight back, and I shot it. I used my rifle, and I killed him. And I got this message saying, like, hey, thanks for taking him alive. We're going to really learn a lot from this. I'm like, what? Like, I killed him with a fucking grenade.
Those
like,
are bugs. Yeah, that's my guess. It's just not registering stuff the way it's supposed to.
There's no option for that. Like, there's, I don't know. Like, it was weird to me that, like, it didn't matter what I did.
I've had goofy stuff like that happen all the time, Matt. And I'll be honest with you, I just kind of brush it off. I'm like, because I don't know if I'll ever figure out if it's a bug or a feature.
Yeah.
You just won't. That's the thing with
is
this
it a bug
game.
or an oversight?
There's
and
so
does it
much
matter?
stuff that's like not working exactly how it should.
Right.
Or little glitches, and it's hard to figure out like what's supposed to be some weird like cyberpunk visual anomaly or what's just like a freaking bug. Like, it's really
and it's getting
weird.
up. I mean, when I put the disc in Monday night to install it, it installed and it also installed like a 48 gig patch.
And then the next day, another 24 gig
it was like
patch.
a 24 gig patch.
Yep.
So like they're working on it, and they're supposed to put up another patch to deal with the epilepsy issue, or at least to put a warning on it. So for that, like basically, as soon as you go in for the brain dance thing and that, like, watch yourself. Like,
If you
I don't know what else.
have a proclivity.
Or if you don't, look, like I always worry about it because like sometimes you don't know until it happens.
That's true. It's absolutely
until
true.
you get exposed to the right flashing light or the right
The
whatever.
right pattern,
like,
or the
it's
wrong.
never happened to me, but who knows?
Yeah, you don't know for sure. So to me, this game is a buy, and it's a buy right now. I have all these games still sitting that I haven't finished. I haven't finished Valhalla. I haven't finished Immortals. I haven't finished Watch Dogs Legion, which is a pretty good analog to this. But this is the game that I want to keep playing. And there has not been a game that I wanted to keep playing as much as this one since The Last of Us Part 2. So, and Ghost of Tsushima. That I lumped those two together because they came out.
They're right at the same time.
They came out so close to each other. So those two games, like I have not played a game that I have not wanted to put down as much as those two since this one. So I do recommend buying it at full price. I think we all can trust that CD Projekt Red will keep working on this and will eventually get it to a much better place. But I haven't, like, bugs that bother me are bugs that wipe out my progress. Bugs that wipe out my time that I've spent playing a game. My time is really valuable to me. Like, every hour I have earmarked to do something for Sifted, for myself, for my wife, whatever. Games that take that away are the games that are deal breakers for me, and I will not recommend. This game has not done that for me. There have been some funny bugs. There have been some annoying bugs. There have been some bugs that I didn't know if they were bugs, but none of them have, like, crushed my soul. So with that, I will actually recommend that you pick this up, but with Matt's caveat that definitely watch some YouTube footage of the base PS4 and the base Xbox One if that's all you've got right now, because there are some definite issues with those. And any closing comments from you, Matt?
No, I mean, I'm more of a lukewarm buy recommendation. I just feel like you're going to have a better time if you wait for them to fix more of it.
You will, for sure.
And the only reason to play it now, I think, is just like wanting to be in on the hype and the conversation about it.
Yep.
Which is fair. It's fair. It's not like you got to buy like $120 special edition or whatever. It's just $60 for the whole shebang. You're getting DLC, story-driven DLC next year. It's going to,
maybe
there's value
we'll
there.
See.
Well, I mean, it's coming one day. We
Someday, yeah, for free.
But like my main thing, it's like I would say I'm kind of in the opposite boat in that I've found it very easy to take breaks from this game.
Really? I haven't, man. I get sucked into it and I just keep going.
No, I'm not particularly compelled to just obsessively play this thing the way I was with like Ghost of Tsushima.
Wow.
And I don't know why. Like, it's just maybe it's partly because I expected any moment for the damn thing to crash and have to redo all my HDR settings again.
Honestly,
but like,
I think for you it's just subconscious, and it goes back to what I was saying, that this game is like a bunch of stuff snapped together. It's not this overarching thing, this living, breathing organism that you just kind of assimilate into and live with for a while. It is very much just chunked up into pieces, and that part of it I do kind of like. I'm never in this place where I'm like, oh, I'm in the middle of this and I really need to stop playing and do this other thing, but I can't save yet, or I don't want to save yet. This game is just like, I finished that thing and now I can save and I can go on my way. And in that way, like you said, it is very much like an old game.
Yeah. I guess I feel like in that way, I do kind of feel that like it's a little less than the sum of its parts right now.
I'd agree.
And
I agree with that.
I think that's not permanent. Doesn't have to be permanent. Like they could smooth it out into something that plays itself a little better in terms of sort of an overall package. But right now, I feel like, especially based, like you said, based on your tolerance for various bugs, and I haven't lost any progress on anything either. I haven't lost any time. I've just lost, settings or had to restart or whatever for various things to get around bugs. But like, if the kind of the quality and the flow of the experience is important to you, it is not currently in the state to support that.
Yep, I agree.
I guess how I'd put it.
Okay.
So I'm not recommending it, but I am saying it'll be better in March.
Definitely. I mean, but you can also say that about pretty much every game. It's always going to be better than what it was at launch usually.
Somewhat. I just have much more faith in CD Projekt Red to fix their shit.
Because we've seen them go through it, because they always release broken games.
Yeah.
All right, so there you go. That's our first takes on Cyberpunk 2077. So for next week, obviously, we're doing a Game of the Year episode, and we'll talk about the Game Awards before we go into our Game of the Year awards. Maybe we'll touch on this again. I'm not promising it. We'll see. There's also a possibility we may do another episode of GameFace before the year is over, after the Game of the Year episode. And if that's the case, we will absolutely talk about it again, along with probably Immortals and maybe a couple others that we've had more time to, or more chance to spend some time with. And with that, it's time for Q&A, and I'm going to put on my reading glasses because I didn't print out the Q&A, because you guys got them to me a little bit late today. I asked for them late, so it's my fault, not your guys' fault, to be honest with you. But you guys were awesome. You got questions into the official thread in our forums and on Twitter. The first one, let's see here, comes from... Oh, I'm sorry. It just reloaded and took me to the top of the thread. Sorry, guys. Here we go. From Steve D. Oh, no. No, I'm sorry. I've totally botched this whole Q&A. I'm sorry. I literally had this queued up on my phone to the exact point. And when I open my phone back up, all of a sudden it's back to the top of the thread. Okay, I found it now. I've actually got to it. First one from Best Jeppy from Sifted. What's your thoughts on CD Projekt Red not making any console review code available? What's your thoughts on reviewers only allowed to use B-roll provided by CD Projekt Red? How has the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 possibly affected your views on CD Projekt Red? It hasn't affected my views on CD Projekt Red at all, because I haven't really had that high of an opinion of them in the first place. I mean, I respect them for the work they do. I don't like the fact that their entire community attacked me and they didn't step in and help. And they know it. They know that it was going on. So that bothers me a little bit. They didn't even reach out to me and be like, hey, some of our fans are crazy, and yeah, I know they're threatening to kill you and your family and all, and that sucked. Like, nothing. And they knew this was going on. So my impressions of CD Projekt Red, like on the human angle, has not been that high. But I don't care. I don't really care what they do. All I care about is their video games and how good their video games are. We had this discussion a couple weeks ago. This is something that Matt has a different perspective on. I just look at the game and say, do I like the game or do I not? And so I'm not going to have my personal feelings for CD Projekt Red get tied up in my opinion of the game that I share with you guys here on the show. What's your take, Matt?
I mean, my opinion of them has gone down since The Witcher 3, mostly in how they've handled some issues with the LGBT community and just not addressing those things like strongly enough. Like they do the minimum to think that they think they can get away with and not get tagged for it, basically. And they're the ultimate representation of that, like that element of things in the actual game is disappointing in the sense that is the kind of the idea of what that would be in 2077, and just kind of the direction things are going. Like maybe it doesn't. Maybe if you're extrapolating from 1988, it doesn't work the same way as it does from extrapolating from our society now. But it just feels like there are no significant trans or gay lesbian characters in the game that I've found so far. It just feels like they just sort of ignored it. Yeah. And used it as sort of they used it as window dressing, and they used the LGBT community as window dressing to some degree in terms of sort of the setting, and didn't address it narratively. And I think that is either lazy or cowardly, one or the other. And maybe there's more stuff later on. I mean, obviously, I haven't played the whole thing, but so far I am unimpressed in that regard. It doesn't change anything about how I feel about playing the game. Like I am, in terms of playing the game and recommending someone play the game, I am much more likely to say, hey, the guns kind of suck over it doesn't deal with trans issues well. Yep. But both of those things are things to discuss and talk about. I am not as irritated with CD Projekt Red over the gunplay as I am over their lack of ability to handle trans issues well. I am much more irritated with the game itself for the gunplay in contrast, because that's what you have to play with, Got it. Yeah. CD Projekt Red, while I had a very high opinion for a long time, like I feel like the shine is off that diamond for me to some degree. And in terms of like what they did with no console code, like look, we played the console versions. We played the PS4 version early here because of where we got getting the PS4 version on Monday. I can see why they didn't send that to the press. Like that was a mess, early day one. So PC's the one they have maybe more control or more polish on the code. Makes sense. Not lying, B-roll is shitty.
Dirty. It's dirty. It's shady. Yeah. I mean, they didn't send out code to like hardly anyone because they knew.
I know people who didn't get code for this, and I'm like, it blows my mind they didn't get code.
Yeah, they try to keep it away from people.
Weird.
Yep, that's shady and bad. I think you guys knew I was going to say that though.
So they knew that this thing was not ready for prime time.
Absolutely. Next up from Sorefear. Here's a funny one. Does it bother you or take you out of a game when water sprays on the camera, leaving droplets? I'll say this: it's not realistic. Because it means that like I'm looking through a piece of glass. Like if I'm just looking through my eyes, I don't see droplets. So to me, it's not realistic. And I'll say this: every game used to put it in it, and they've stopped. Not every game
less
includes
now.
it.
Now, to be fair, I wear glasses, so it is realistic to me.
That's okay, touche.
The less realistic part is that the drop goes away.
Right.
But funny. Yes, it does imply that you're looking through a camera, not an eye,
right.
Which is a strange thing to, It's part of the language of games, I guess. It's a conceit of like that's how you show that it's raining on you.
It's so goofy. It just started like in the N64 era, and they're just like, we're just gonna keep doing it. Like,
we're also talking about a medium where like if you get shot with enough bullets, you see enough jam in front of you, and that's when you die.
That's true.
It's a conceit. It's a way to communicate some information, but it is pretty silly.
Yep. Let's see. Suicide King. Sony announced that it secured at least 2-year exclusives with Square's upcoming game project Athia. That was also announced today. What do you think this cost Sony? It seems it could be expensive because of Square missing out on Xbox sales and possibly on Switch sales. Blah, blah, blah. So what do you think? Knowing some of that data that we got from Capcom a couple weeks ago, using that as a frame of reference.
I don't know, really. I don't really have an opinion on this yet.
I'd say $5 million.
That does seem to be sort of how they've gone with it, yeah.
That seems to be the going rate. I mean, that's all it took for Sony to pay Capcom to get exclusives on PS4, so I'm going to go with it. Japanese publisher, $5 million. That's my guess.
Unproven property.
Yep.
Yeah.
And worth it, in my opinion.
I mean, that's a deal for just about anything.
Heck yeah. Anything related to game development. $5 million is like pocket lint. Here's another one. With Halo Infinite being delayed until the fourth quarter of 2021, that was announced today. It's not coming out until holiday 2021. Does this leave a hard uphill battle for it being a success going against a new Battlefield and Call of Duty?
And whatever else comes out, we still don't know.
And PS5 first-party exclusives that'll be coming out.
Yeah, Horizon will be out there.
And a lot of overlap being in the same genre, or will Microsoft just throw it up on Game Pass and negate the battle? Oh, that's definitely not happening. They're not going to just throw it up on Game Pass. It will be on Game Pass, but it's going to release at retail. Microsoft needs that $60 from the people who don't subscribe via Game Pass.
No question.
Yeah, it's not going to just become a digital-only game. As to the rest of your point, I mean, it's doomed. The Xbox Series X is screwed. Like, I still think Microsoft can make it a successful business, and they'll make a lot of money off of it. And I think they can get to a place where they're making a ton of money off Game Pass. And it may even get to a point where Microsoft is actually generating more profit from Xbox Series consoles than Sony is from PlayStation 5. But the console war is over. It was over as soon as there wasn't a big launch game for Series X. And you're seeing it in the sales. It's 2-1 for PlayStation 5. Even in the resale market, it's 2-1 for PlayStation 5. So
we'll see. Like, we don't know what the future holds. No one at the beginning of last gen could have predicted PUBG or anything like that.
Yep.
But Xbox might end up with some kind of killer app somewhere that we don't know, but you can't possibly predict. But I don't think it's going to be Halo.
I think it would need it pretty quickly too if it has hopes of.
It would have to be something in the coming year.
Winning the generation. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think it can win the generation. All they can hope for is to close the gap somewhat.
Kind of like Sony did with PlayStation 3.
Pretty much.
Towards the end, got almost to even, but by then no one cared.
Right.
I could see maybe that happening with Xbox.
But yeah, by the end no one cared, and you were selling those things for a third of what they launched at price-wise. It just, it was a different game at that point. But, you never know. Like, there could be something in the wings that we just don't know about, or even they don't know is going to blow up. We have no idea what the next, Fall Guys is going to be.
Yep. Here's one from Twitter from Agent 47. Given how bad Cyberpunk's performance is on the base consoles and PC essentially being the lead platform, do you think CD Projekt Red should have just canceled or at least delayed to mid-2021 past-gen versions and released the game for PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC only? If it was feasible, yes. But it wasn't.
Possible, yeah. But what they should have found a way to. I mean, it was probably not allowed by the console manufacturers. They should have been like Pro and Series and Xbox One X only.
Yep.
I don't think there's a way to lock that out, though. Really.
And honestly, I don't think CD Projekt Red wanted to.
Probably not.
They want those sales. I mean, a lot of people bought those base consoles.
At last count, about 50% of the pre-orders were console.
Yeah.
So no, you do not.
So
you do not
there were 4 million PC pre-orders.
There were a lot of
Whoa, that would be the most pre-ordered game ever.
The numbers I've seen were console pre-orders were 41 to 50%.
Wow, dude, they had 8 million pre-orders.
Yeah, that was a while ago, so that might have changed. But
they ended up with 8 million pre-orders, Matt.
That's still a lot of PC orders.
That's insane. 8 million pre-orders.
And if you're going through GOG, that's pure. That's all to them.
It's crazy. So. Well, WB gets like a little bit of a cut, I think.
Not on GOG.
Right.
WB doesn't distribute the PC version.
Every question is about Cyberpunk. Not a surprise. Let's see. With CD Projekt, this is from Arj Naik. With CD Projekt Red effectively releasing a broken game to those with base PS4s and Xbox Series X, do you think they should have been open and upfront with those who pre-ordered? Or should they have delayed the release of the game?
There's no point in delaying it because they're never going to work right.
Right.
They should have been upfront about it.
Yep.
You should have just said, like, if you have a vanilla PS4 or Xbox One, you should be ready that this is what it's going to look like.
That's a great sticker to put on the box. But I mean, they didn't even really release any console footage. It was all PC footage all along.
Recently, yeah.
They just weren't prepared for this. They bit off more than they could chew, and they couldn't get the game finished in time, even after they delayed it 3 times. So to this game, to say it could have just languished on forever. Like, some people would argue The Witcher 3 still shouldn't be out. Like, it's all about tolerance, risk, reward, risk tolerance for CD Projekt Red. How many of their fans are going to be pissed and not want to buy their games again? They looked at all that stuff before they decided to release this thing and decided that it was smart to do so. And based upon 8 million pre-orders, I think they made the right call. I hate to say it.
Well, also delaying it's not going to make the PS4 or the Xbox One more powerful.
That's true.
Like, it's never going to be any better.
Yep.
So,
well, I mean, you can finagle with the code, but for what? For why?
For what?
Most people are going to be
really
moving on from those in
those?
the next 6 months anyway, and they're going to buy it anyway. So, yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying. And yes, CD Projekt Red has been shady through this whole thing, but truth be told, at this point where we're sitting right now, I don't know that there's much that can be done to fix the current situation. So
no, and I mean, it's not like we didn't suspect.
Yep. I mean, I think we said chances are it'll barely run on base Xbox One.
And we're hardly the only ones who were saying that.
Yeah, I'm sure others were saying the same thing. So not that big of a surprise, unfortunately. All right, that's it for GameFace episode 240. We will talk about this game again, I am sure, many times over. Obviously, our Game of the Year awards happening next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm sure we will talk about that game again then, among many, many others. And that show is streaming live, so try to set yourself an appointment for next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/Sifted Games. If you missed the show open or you just skip past it, I did give an update on the t-shirts. I'm not going to go into a full-bore explanation again here. If you want that, go back and watch the open again. The bottom line is the shirts are not shipping for another couple more days. If you're not happy with that, send an email to orders@sifted.net, and we will refund your money immediately, no questions asked. Just letting you guys know, if you're wondering where your shirts are, they are still not shipping for a couple more days. But I just wanted to be honest with you guys and let you guys know what was going on. A couple other things. As I said a couple minutes ago, we may do another show after the Game of the Year show. It depends on whether I go home or not. Right now, I am literally still just completely on the fence on whether I should go home. My heart is telling me yes. My mind is telling me no. I want to see my mom really badly and the rest of my family. My mind is telling me it's one of the dumbest things I could ever do in my life. So I'm still struggling through it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have not seen anyone in my family for a year now. I really need to see them, but I don't know. So just follow me on Twitter @Dinfire. You'll know. But if I do stay here, we will do another episode of GameFace before the end of the year. What else do I got? Man, it's just crazy. The end of the year is wrapping up. I've got some messages from people who are asking me how they can hook us up with Christmas gifts and things like that. Let's see. You're not going to send us anything. We're not going to give you an address to ship us Christmas gifts, unfortunately. But if you'd like to do something for the site or for me or for Matt, you can always just donate. You can go to sifted.net/donate. And you can use your PayPal account or your credit card to give us any amount of money you want to give us. If you want to just buy us a beer for the holidays, give us $5. If you want to thank us for all the work that we've done and doing this through a crazy once-in-100 years pandemic, then you can do that as well. You can give us as much or as little as you want. If you'd rather do something tangible, buy a shirt. Buy a t-shirt. I don't want to be living with these things for the next year and a half. And that's the best way you can do it. So sifted.net/donate. The best part about that too is that Patreon doesn't take a cut. So we actually get more of the money there. So if you're thinking about, hey, maybe I'll pledge a lot for January as a thank you, it's better if you go to sifted.net/donate because Patreon will take a cut of your money if you do it through Patreon. And I'm not breaking any rules by saying this, by the way. I'm not breaking any Patreon law or anything. We're just trying to make sure that any amount of money you give us, we get the most of it, and Patreon doesn't get any of it if we can avoid it. So anyway, those are 2 easy ways to help us and give us a Christmas gift. If you're on YouTube watching this show, just subscribe via Twitch Prime. It's free. It literally takes 1 second after you set it up. And if you've been watching the show all year on YouTube, think about how many hours of entertainment we've given you. 3 hours a week for 50 weeks. 150 hours of entertainment. If you don't think that's worth anything, then that's really sad. But if you do think it's worth something, then at least hook us up with Twitch Prime. I know you guys aren't doing it. I can see the numbers. So it's December. It's Christmas. We've worked really hard for you guys all year, giving you all this free content. Help us out, man. We need it. We're little. Every dollar makes a difference to us. Or you can just go throw another $10 at Kind of Funny that goes into an endless bucket that they won't notice. Your choice. But anyway, we will be back here on Tuesday for our Game of the Year awards. Big deal every year. Lots of fanfare. Lots of fun. Another episode, 50-50 right now before the end of 2020. But I hope all you guys are starting to get into the Christmas mood, into the Christmas spirit. And I hope all you guys are like me and you're thinking the best way that you can celebrate this holiday and be as safe as possible. So on behalf of Matt, who you can find on Twitter at @mkyle, and me, who you can find on Twitter at @dinfire, and this awesome freaking video game website called Sifted that you can find at Sifted Games, we'll see you on Tuesday. GameFace is up and out. Hold on one second.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, what are you doing in here? No. What are you doing in here? You can't just walk into my office, dude. You gotta get out. Dude, this guy just walked in here. This coronavirus, dude. What are you doing? What? You're breathing right now. I'm sorry, dude. Holy crap, dude.
What was that?
This guy just walked in. He's drunk. Like, he smells like a case of beer. And he just walks in, and he's like, can I use the bathroom? I'm like, what?
Like a homeless guy, or?
Yeah, I think it is, yes. That's some scary crap. I don't know how he got in here. How did he get through the gates down there?
Gates are usually open when I've been there.
Holy crap.